and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to an all-new season of the Skip Barber Challenge Trophy, as brought to you by Gone Skipping Racing, sponsored by Musical Money, and hosted on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC, known as iRacing. And today, as we get a new season underway, of course, we open up the standings and indeed the proceedings with our first two rounds of this 24-round season. It is going to be action-packed from the very start to the very end, and what better place to kick things off than Charlotte Motor Speedway. Located in the North American continent, particularly in the United States of America, in the US state of North Carolina, this circuit, located in the very heart of some of motorsporting's finest history, is a circuit like no other when it comes to a multitude of layouts. With Charlotte Motor Speedway involving multiple oval layouts, road racing layouts, rallycross and also drag strips, this circuit is going today be a setup for the road course layout, or the Roval as it's infamously known, having been added to iRacing in its current state back in 2018. And as our drivers get ready to go racing around this circuit with 20 corners, or 19 depending on your perspective, but we're going to call it 20, they're going to have an ultimate challenge confronting them, because they have a variety of straights, a variety of bank turns, a variety of chicanes, and a variety of low, medium and high speed corners, and put it all together with the 150 horsepower SBF 2000 machines, or the Skip Barber Formulas, and you can imagine our drivers will literally have to be on their toes if they want to do well here today. But speaking of doing well here and talking about the opening races, let's take you through your scheduled times in Greenwich Mean Time, that's GMT, or Universal Coordinated Time at UTC. Our schedule is as follows for today. In just under what will be 19 minutes time, we'll be heading into our first qualifying session of the season. It'll be 15 minutes in duration, with all of our drivers taken to the circuit and all looking to absolutely deliver as best they possibly can as they head into the first race of today. The first race of round number one will be the opening sprint of 20 minutes in duration, and that will be at 9:15 this evening, after which our drivers will have a brief breather before returning at approximately 9:10 for the build up to the feature race. 40 minutes in duration, and there, as we see our drivers take to the circuit, there'll be the added addition of strategy. There's no pit stop in the sprint, but there's a mandatory pit stop expected in the feature for round number two of the two races here, and who's going to be able to find both the speed and also the strategy and make it work to their advantage. But as you are tuning in, of course, you're tuning in live via one media platform today, and that is the official YouTube channel for this broadcast, located in youtube.com. Search for TX141TX or Paul Walsh, and you can tune in there, and we do say hello to you guys and girls in the chat. But who is Paul Walsh? Who is TX141? Well, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Paul Walsh, also known as TX141 or Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on, and I'll be bringing you all your racing action for today, and indeed for the whole season. And what a season we have in wait as we take a look to our calendar. For as we can see here, whilst today we open up on the 17th of March in the United States of America, and indeed we do have a multitude of round pairings in the US of A, but it's not just about the United States, it's also about going around the world on an international scale. Rounds 1 and 2 are at Charlotte Motor Speedway, but in the week's time we'll be making our way to Florida for the Sebring International Raceway, and of course hosting a multitude of races this weekend, and rounds 3 and 4 will take place there on the 24th of March, before we then make our way down under to Australia for rounds 5 and 6. The common theme, of course, is all race rounds are held on Fridays, and we'll see there in our third venue at Bathurst or Mount Panorama, depending on your preference. Now our drivers will have to make their way up and down the mountain multiple times on the 31st of March, before then making their way back to the United States of America for Road Atlanta. That'll be in rounds 7 and 8, and there we'll see our drivers take to the state of Georgia in the roller coaster ride of road racing, and who will be able to keep their cool, keep their calm, and keep it on circuit on the 7th of April. Then for our fifth venue, to conclude our first 10 rounds, we're making our way to Summit Point Raceway, also in the United States of America, and then on the 14th of April, a more traditional circuit and perhaps better catered to these cars in terms of its size, scale and multitude of corners, but still our drivers will be looking to get their utmost out of the circuit, before then on the 21st of April they make their way into rounds 11 and 12 to Phillip Island, back in the Australian counties, and indeed our drivers there at Phillip Island will enjoy the circuit that's more commonly seen as the scene for V8 supercars, but at the same time they'll be taken to Phillip Island and thinking about how best they can power their way around the circuit. That'll be on the 21st of April, and then on the 13th and 14th rounds on the 28th of April we'll be heading to Japan for the Okayama circuit. Of course, a circuit that's more typically featured in domestic Japanese calendars, also previously known as the T1 Ida circuit, well now known as Okayama. Our drivers will be looking to master the corners there, for in rounds 15 and 16 we head to Canada for the Charles Villeneuve circuit, and there in Montreal on the 5th of May it's going to be tight, it's going to be close, and it's going to be near as possible to a street circuit, but not quite one, in the national park. For our drivers then make their way to the European continent for the one and only time this season, and it will be the rounds 17 and 18 that will see our drivers take to the combined layout of the Nürburgring Grand Prix Strecke and the Nürburgring Nordschleife loops, put together known as the Nürburgring Gesamtstrecke or Nürburgring Combined. Indeed, that is going to be a tale for all of our drivers to try and survive. That'll be on the 12th of May, before in rounds 19 and 20, we then make our way back to the United States of America, and in particular to the state of Michigan for the street circuit around Detroit. You all know and love it as Belle Isle, or the Detroit Grand Prix at Belle Isle, and that will be our ultimate street race of the season there, with bumpy road surface and very tight walls, meaning that our drivers will have to be right on the precision in terms of hitting their apexes time and time again on the 19th of May. Then our penultimate pair of rounds, we head to the state of New York for Watkins Glen International, now being rounds 21 and 22, and I think it's going to feel as though it's Skip Barber's and meet NASCAR there, given the fact that Watkins Glen circuit known for its medium to high speed corners and flat out racing, and that'll be on the 26th of May, where we bring it all to a close at the Virginia International Raceway in rounds 23 and 24 on the 2nd of June. Indeed, that circuit, much like our circuit for today, is one that's got a whole plethora of corners to test our drivers' ability, but we've got an absolutely packed calendar ahead of us, ladies and gentlemen, and let's dive into our circuit for today. It is, of course, the Charlotte Motor Speedway Roval along 2018 layout, located in Concord in Cabarrus County of North Carolina in the United States of America. This circuit, as you can see from the circuit map provided to us by iRacing.com, thank you to them, of course, for their circuit maps and their wonderful simulator, is a circuit that brings the best elements of the long oval plus also the infield layouts. Whereas our drivers make their way across the start-finish line into turn 1, they'll find the sweeping left-hander is not too much of a change given the amount of speed they'll be carrying into the opening corner, and they'll flow their way through turn number 2, before starting to see the average apex speed descend quite rapidly. Breaking the way through turn number 3 and flexing into turn 4, there we see the double right-hand complex really start to bring the speed down, but as they make their way up the short stretch towards turn number 5, a sharp right-hander there before they come into the jaunt at turn 6 and 7, the right into left, and turn 7 really starting an elongated medium speed hairpin that slows down on the apex of turn number 8, but as they make their way through the left-hander at turn 8, they'll power their way up towards 9 and find there's quite the symmetry there as they go back on themselves through the left into right at turns 8 and 9, and then power the way out to the slightest corner on the circuit in terms of hairpin considerations, and that's turn number 10. Get it right there, they'll make their way back onto the oval and head through the banking through turns 11 and 12 before making their way all the way down to the bus stop chicane, the first of two major chicanes that could be called a bus stop, and that is at turns 13 through to 16, where it's all about balancing the throttle and balancing the weight transfer of the car as they make the way through the left-right combination, in fact left-right-right-left combination we should say, and as they make their way onto the second part of the banking of the oval at turns 17 and 18, it's a flat-out run all the way through, and then they come to the final chicane complex that turns 19 and 20 as they go from the right into left-hand to complete the lap and do it all again. And from listening down in the paddock in the build-up to tonight, I can tell you most of our drivers are very apprehensive about that final chicane because a number of drivers in the free practice sessions in the build-up have seen their cars ending up on their side in some cases where they've clattered over the raised curbing. Hopefully we're not going to see that today, but we have heard rumours that some drivers definitely a little bit timid of what could lie in wait. But speaking of racing, we take a look at our rules, and let's take you through the rule set that our drivers will be racing through. In terms of setups, this is an open setup series where drivers will be coming to each round with a setup of their choice. Car fuel loads, however, have been restricted to 70% for all race day sessions, so that is in terms of qualifying, also in the sprint, and also in the feature race. Now, as for qualifying, an open qualifying format shall be used. What does that mean in simple English? Well, it means that when we go into qualifying for 15 minutes, you will see all of our drivers out on circuit. And as we come onto our wider rule set, in terms of the races in general, we can tell you that races shall commence via a standing start, as is the tradition of the Skip Barber series, and one fast repair is available in each of the races in case our drivers end up in a major incident, not necessarily their fault, and they're able to use that fast repair in order to get themselves back out onto circuit. Now, as for drive-through penalties or instant counts, we'll see that our drivers will receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 17 or more instant points, and should they go the full distance to 25 instant points, they shall be disqualified from the given race. Now, speaking about the sprint race in particular, there are no mandatory pit stop requirements, so it'll be no holds barred action from start to finish, and our drivers are expected to stay out on circuit all the way through unless they pick up damage and are mandated to come into the pits. And as for the future race, the grid shall be set based on the results of the sprint race with the top 10 finishing positions inverted. So what does that mean? Well, it means that when we see the sprint finish, whoever's the winner of the sprint will end up qualifying for P10 on the grid for the feature race, and we work backwards down the order of the sprint finishers from P1 to P10. So the 10th place finisher of the sprint will be starting on pole for the feature race, and our drivers who finished a length downwards, so that is exactly where they'll be starting for the feature race. And also, as we said earlier, there is one mandatory pit stop in the feature in which drivers must take on fuel, but changing tyres is entirely optional. It's a gamble that is up to our drivers. But as our drivers get ready to go racing, of course, we look back to our live pictures here, ladies and gentlemen, and well, everybody getting absolutely set right now. And as we do look for our drivers heading on around, and you'll notice that every so often our overlay will just refresh itself in the background. We are still loading driver data in, given this is the season opening pair of rounds, and of course we haven't had time to load all the driver data in so far as more and more drivers of ours join, so therefore you will see the screen refresh every so often. But we're just over 10 minutes before we head into our first qualifying session of the season. We should just point out to you this series is sponsored by Musical Money, and Musical Money is the quick, easy and safe way to turn your musical equipment into money, located at www.musical-money.co.uk. But I almost stumble over my words there, and we do look to Rody van der Meerden making his way on around here, and in fact heading on up out of the pit lane and into turn number 3. Or the STM driver here from the Netherlands in the number 15 car, gliding his way on through turns 3 and 4, then getting himself back up to speed and deciding to go out one more time. But we do have 30 drivers in attendance so far, and I do believe this series is absolutely packed out in terms of sign-ups. We are expecting potentially up to 40 drivers in some instances, not necessarily today, but over the future rounds we'll definitely see more and more drivers take to the circuit. But as we can see here, Benjamin Harris making his way on around it, obscured slightly by one of the marshalling boards as he comes on through turn 2 and up into 3-4. The privateer from the United States of America will, on a little bit of home soil effectively here, he'll have that back in behind him. It gives you a little bit of 10% motivation. And I didn't get the opportunity to speak to Benjamin Harris and ask exactly which state he hails from, in case this could be his state, of course, North Carolina, but you never know. But he'll always be thinking about the fact that he is racing on home soil, and therefore he'll have a little bit of an extra 5% with him. It just galvanises you a little bit further. But as we do say hello to a number of you in the YouTube chat, and we do firstly say hello there to Rody Meerden, and I do believe that is the official YouTube account, of course, of Rody van der Meerden, who we see here making his way out of the pit lane. We also say hello to Sleepy Cat Racing there. Good evening to you, Sleepy Cat, and also to KMSR 1997, who is cheering on Charlotte Motorsport. Well, as we do look further around the field here, we do see our fastest driver on circuit currently, and that is Rasmus Vilry, the Finn, the Flying Finn, the privateer in the number 4 car, and running in an all-white livery there, and will right now definitely fly in the colours of his national flag with the blue flex there on the front and also on the rear wing. But as he makes his way out of the final corner, just missing the wall there, and that shows you how close you've got to be in order to get it absolutely right around this circuit, as he now comes charging on down towards what is turns 2, 3 and 4 once again in quick sequence. But to nail it here, you really do need to have a mastery of the car, of the Skip Barber machine from the outset, and that's why this is going to be a very interesting season open, because this season open is not going to hold back when it comes to putting our drivers under pressure straight away and making them have to work hard in order to deliver a good result. This is not a circuit where you can set a car a particular way. It's not a circuit that's known for, say, high downforce, because if you invest in downforce, then you lose out on the oval sections and indeed the straights compared to what you gain in the corners. Conversely, if you decide not to invest in too much downforce, then you'll lose out quite considerably in the infield section with the variety of corners, particularly the transition from the medium speed sweepers into the lower speed hairpins, and that will be on the minds of our drivers in terms of the fact, how do they balance their car for the ideal setup. Well, the trick you have to go for is you have to go for a setup that suits you as a driver. And of course you can't min-max in terms of straight line speed, because if you go too far one way, as we said earlier, you will lose out massively, and particularly on the oval banking, as we do see here, Rasmus Vilry made his way down towards the bus stop chicane. You can imagine if running maximum rear wing will look very vulnerable in the toe as he comes into the chicane and out of it and onto the second part of the oval banking. As he makes his way on around there. Of course, this series is a Drivers' Championship only. We are not expecting there to be any Teams' Championship, as we have been informed. As we see Nick Vaughan Roberts there drifting his way through the chicane and just missing the wall. Goodness me, the Welshman there sending it sideways and catching it nicely. But this is a purely Drivers' Championship, so therefore when we do give you the updated standings after each round, in fact we'll be giving you the updated standings at the beginning of each subsequent broadcast. So at the start of next week's broadcast, you'll see the standings after the first 2 rounds. We'll be talking purely about how the drivers' points accrue against one another. Indeed, all our drivers have a bit of pride on the line because they all want to do well. But we've talked a lot about our drivers, we've talked a lot about the circuit and introduced the format and the theme. But I guess the big question is, what about the car our drivers are driving? And that is, of course, the Skip Barber Formula, or the SBF 2000. Well, this car, it has been replaced in more recent years by a bit more of an aggressive machine from Skip Barber, as he Paul Smith first there, having a bit of difficulty making his way up through the turn 10 hairpin. But as he gets up to power right now, we ride on board with the Britain, the privateer in the 77 car. This is a car made and manufactured by Skip Barber, powered by 150 horsepower, 5-speed sequential transmission. Now, the idea behind this car is it is an introduction to Formula Road racing, but you could widely regard it as an introduction to all road racing regardless of discipline, because the lessons you learn in this car can be taken to most other road racing disciplines by default. Now, because it's only 150 horsepower, but it's a very light frame of the car, that means that this car doesn't pack a huge amount of punch with regards to engine and throttle, but also at the same time it doesn't have quite a high top speed. So instead, it's all about mastering your trade in terms of hitting your apexes, carrying the speed, returning to full throttle as soon as possible. And those are the key things that drivers in both the real world and also the virtual racing world learn in these machines. I can tell you recently, having been doing some of my own lessons in terms of learning how to become a race driver, the thing they teach you first and foremost is with regards to the ability to brake correctly, approach the apex correctly, and also return to throttle as soon as possible, and therefore you carry as much speed from corner to corner. And that's exactly what these machines bring out in drivers. Indeed, many a driver, including some of the greats across, say, Formula 1 and going into other disciplines such as Juan Pablo Montoya, started off their careers racing in these machines, and therefore these machines are not to be scoffed at, and that's why they're absolutely loved. And indeed, down the paddock, so many of our drivers talking about their love for the Skip Barber Formula 2000 machine, and indeed that's not as popular as it used to be on iRacing, but it's still popular in the hearts of many. And Smithhurst here definitely giving us an exhibition of how it goes around the Charlotte Motor Speedway as he makes his way, in fact, the Motor Roval Speedway, as he heads on through turn number 10. And again, we can see here with the close walls as well, our drivers will be pushed to try and avoid the walls but get as close as possible to them, because every millimetre you can maximise in terms of circuit width, the greater your lap time is going to be in terms of how you qualify versus your rivals. But with only 4 minutes left on the clock before our drivers get ready to head into the qualifying session, well, we do look from Smithhurst to one of our drivers a little bit further on down the order, and that is AJ Campbell, as we see the Alta Motorsport driver here from Germany gliding his way on through the chicane as he comes out of turns at 16, now heading up onto the banking once again, carrying all the speed through very nice. As we say hello there to Jerry, the race car driver. Good evening to you, Jerry. Hope you're doing well and you're having a good day. And indeed, to those of you tuning in, it's of course Friday. The weekend is almost upon us, and if you haven't had a great day today, you haven't had a great week, well, hopefully some classic Skip Barber Formula Racing can bring a smile to your face. Indeed, if you're having a good day, hopefully this will make it even better. And if you haven't got yourself a hot beverage yet, or you haven't got yourself some snacks to get ready to watch the racing, we've only got 3 minutes to go before we head into qualifying, ladies and gentlemen, so do so now, so that way you don't miss out when we do head into our first flying session of the season. And as we look to Stefan Krumpholz here, we can see the Alta Motorsport driver, also from Germany, in the 744 machine, making his way on around here on the banking of turns 11 and 12, and as he powers on through, just keeping it nice and simple at the moment, and making his way up towards the bus stop chicane. And well, I think in his mind he'll also be thinking about what can he do to deliver as he gets ready and set into qualifying. As he comes on down and through here, when I had the opportunity to speak to Krumpholz in the build-up to tonight, he was excited for it, but he didn't have any specific comments with regards to the series or his expectations for the series. Although when I did ask a number of drivers about it, a number of them did feed me on some feedback or their thoughts. And to give you an idea, when I spoke to Rodi van der Midden, as we can see here, the Dutchman making his way on through for STM, he had to say to me with regards to his expectations going into this is that his goal is not to finish last. That's his simple target. Enjoy the racing and not finish last. He drummed it all up, he made me all suspenseful about it, and he just came out with that simple phrase, indeed nobody ever wants to finish last, but first, in order to finish, but first you must get to the very end. And as he makes way through, in fact, butchering the saying there, to finish first you must finish, is the actual saying, which we get right the second time of asking, as we see the number 15 driver making his way through turn number 1. That's so aggressive there on approach, and that's what you got to do, carry the speed on through, of course. Well, right now he'll be getting himself all composed and mentally set, but coming out of the pit lane there, just behind the series host and the brains behind the operation, you could say, with regards to organising this series, Jeff Randall from Gone Skipping Racing, the number 107 driver here, making his way up towards turns 5 and 6, and all the Britain absolutely excited for tonight. And when I had the opportunity to catch up with him down in the paddock, he was saying he's just hoping for close, clean racing, plus the odd podium for him would be nice. And a little bit of information with regards to his door number being 107. Well, not really door number, his car number being 107. We do refer to it as door number, but it's on the rear wing of these machines. and that the 107 is a shout out or a reference to his snooker playing days prior to starting sim racing, as he started sim racing in lockdown, but before that, when he was a major snooker player, 107 was his highest break score, which he achieved when he just turned 50. So that's why he runs number 107. He hasn't picked up a snooker cue since lockdown, however, when we had the COVID-19 lockdown, as he's fallen in love with the whole sim racing hobby in general. And it's indeed lovely to hear that, and so many getting into sim racing during the COVID-19 lockdown, so many carrying on with that hobby that we all know and love. And we do wish Jeff and indeed all of our drivers today the best of luck as they get ready to go. We've got 30 drivers in attendance here, and indeed it is a big circuit, just over 2.2 miles this circuit, and it looks huge on that circuit map in the top right corner of your screen. But I can tell you, when we've got 30 cars out there, it is going to feel cramped, and finding the space to deliver the lap time is going to be just as pivotal as being the fastest driver out there on circuit by default. And as we see Juan Rodriguez making their way across the timeline in the Firebird Sim Racing number 9 machine, the Spaniard here heading into turn number 1, currently P17 in this practice session. But everybody right now not thinking about those times, although some might be looking at the top of the board and seeing how they can beat the flying Finn of Ferrari, as we do see the 39.377 there, indicative of pace potentially. But again, you can't read too much into qualifying for the simple reason what people, not qualifying I should say, into practice, because what drivers do in practice may not be representative of what they're bringing to the table in qualifying. Indeed, we don't know the fuel levels in practice, but what we do know is that the checker flag is out in this practice session, and it is time very shortly, ladies and gentlemen, for us to head to the field for our first qualifying session of the season. All drivers are taken into the pit lane, and now they'll be leaving it to go qualifying for the first 15 minutes. Now, as everybody gets set here, and we do wait to see who will be the first drivers out of the pits, will Nathan Wade leaving his pit box immediately there and charging on away, but indeed a couple of drivers coming out before him. And what does it take to deliver a good qualifying lap here at the Charlotte Roval long circuit? Well, it's all about you as a driver here and finding the balance of the car that suits you as a driver. We could say that you run a little bit less rear wing. We could say you run more rear wing, but it wouldn't really apply given the fact, as we talked about earlier, this circuit has a little bit of everything. Instead, you need to be in your element, you need the car to be set up to your comfort level, and you need to know how much you can push here versus how much you need to restrain yourself for a particular course. You need to know the width of the car, you need to know how close the walls are, the width of every corner, how soon you can get onto the throttle, and it is that precision when it is all added up that is what enables you to deliver the best lap time. It sounds simple, it sounds straightforward, and perhaps the most obvious part, but it's perhaps one of the most understated parts of the race. And when you hear a lot of circuits, they say, well, it's a high downforce circuits, therefore a lot of rear wing, a lot of downforce being applied to a car. Other circuits, it's low downforce, but here it's really about the setup that suits you without going too much towards the maximum margins and then nailing it from the driver's perspective. So that's why this opening round, or pair of rounds we should say, in this opening qualifying session is going to be a true test of the caliber of our drivers from the outset, and we could definitely start to see some early favourites emerge here, given the way things do go. But as we see Wade making his way through the bus stop chicane now, nailing it on through, we do have a 31st driver join us, and that is Stefan Herman, whose details we are just going to be loading into the broadcast, ladies and gentlemen. So you will see the screen refresh very shortly, and that is just simply for the reason that we're making sure their details are available. And as we do see our drivers making their way on to their first flying lap shortly, of course, we'll jump on board for a couple of reference laps over the qualifying session. Not immediately, because our drivers will need a couple of laps in order to get their tyres up to temperature. But once they are in the zone, that is where we will give you those onboard laps and get to see exactly how our drivers deliver those laps and potentially go for the ultimate pole position. But as we can see here, what is our driver Nathan Wade heading on through turn number 5, and meanwhile we do look to AJ Campbell heading on down through turn 3 into 4-5 now. Well, Campbell looking composed there in the draft to his team. I believe that's Quimbo's just in front, as Quimbo's goes a little bit wide, and as they make their way out to the corner, well, a bit of a difficult run there. And that's the thing as well, around here, do you want the toe is perhaps the big challenge, and well, the short answer is yes, you do for the oval banking. You want that slipstream or that toe factor on the second half of the lap, but you do not want it early on when you're going through the infield section, because there it's all about the cornering and your ability to carry the speed. And that's the thing, when you run in the dirty air or the draft of another car, the dirty air reduces the front end downforce of the machine, and in turn that means that your ability to turn into corner apex is compromised. And also when you get back on the power, you naturally feel a little bit more understeering the car. That's where you've turned the steering wheel, but the car wants to point in a straight line and just go straight rather than turn through the corner. And when you go onto the oval banking, the opposite is true, in terms of you're not too worried about that understeer. You don't need to worry too much about biting the car into a corner apex. You just want to carry as much speed as possible, and that's exactly what Campbell was hoping to do. But I think being stuck in the dirty air of Crimholz. We did see there a little bit of an error coming out of turn number 10 with the car just unsettled, and as he made his way onto the path, had to steer clear of the wall. But as we're starting to see some of our very first time shortly coming in, we do look to Wojciech Putic as he makes his way into the bus stop chicane. And I do apologise, I've butchered a couple of drivers' names. I've done my best to try and learn all the pronunciations in the build-up to tonight, but of course will likely butcher a couple of them, and they're going to do a good job most likely in between the races, or indeed in between the rounds, telling me how to pronounce their names. Indeed, call it a little bit like Murray Walker had Murrayisms, call it a Walshism if you will. But as we do see Putic making his way across the timeline, and well, right now it'll go at P13 on a 42.765, but we still do have plenty of times yet to come. And as he makes his way on around here, we do look further afield to Paolo Anzioso, as we see the Italian here heading up towards turns 5 and 6 and through the double right very shortly. And as he makes his way on through, well, currently in at P18, but those lap times continuing to tumble down, as right now Christian Perez is the fastest driver out there on a 40.715, albeit Perez at the moment wary of the fact there's a couple of big names who are just off him, including Burns and Vroy, and we can see the top three right now separated by only 2.5 tenths from P1 and P3, so in their minds they're going to be a little bit conscious of the fact that the lap times are going to keep on coming in, and with it they're not going to be given all the breathing room that perhaps they would like. But as we do see Paolo Anzioso here making his way on around the first part of the oval banking, we do look to Titus de Jong, as we can see the Dutchman making his way on down and through into turns at 7 and 8. Through 7 he's gone into 8 now, and will currently P22 in the number 90 machine. And as he roars his way on through, well, de Jong in the build up tonight was saying to me that whilst the racing's a little bit late in the evening for him personally, he loves the format, and that's what's encouraged him to sign up for the season. And well, good on the man as he makes his way out of turn number 10, and we're giving it everything here despite being a little bit late in the day. But still, I'm sure it's going to be adrenaline pumping all the way. If he's feeling tired, that tiredness will soon be overwhelmed by the sheer adrenaline factor. But as he heads on around then up towards the bus stop chicane, very shortly we do have a couple more drivers heading to the timeline, and we'll jump on board with one of them for the purposes of a flying lap. And in fact, as we do look to Ryan Jackson making his way on down the short stretch between turns 4 and 5. Well, he's just gone on to a lap, and in fact he's a little bit behind in terms of the fact that we're not going to be able to get the lap from the start. In fact, we may go back to Titus de Jong here as he heads to the timeline, and we jump on board for a flying lap of the circuit. So coming through the final chicane, and we do have the dashboard in the bottom right, so you can follow on the gears and the speed. And as he heads down towards turn number 1, looking to his right hand side for his braking marker, the one board there, dab of the brakes, flex the car in third gear, now power up into turn 2. Up to fourth gear, completely flat out as he comes down into the braking zone for turn number 3. Drop the car down to third gear, quick snap on the brakes, bring the car, let it drift out to the left, and before getting tight onto the apex at turn number 4, and now power out using the runoff area there in the charge down towards turn number 5, and now we have the uphill double right as he comes through turn 5 in fourth gear, lets the car stabilise before braking down to second for turn number 6, flips the apex curve there, catches the car, now heading into turn 7 and 8, rolling on through the banking then, you can see using the camber of the road to settle the car in first gear, back up to second as he now heads into turn number 9, and well, it feels like this corner will never end in first gear, heads on out there, doesn't use the full width of the circuit, interesting enough, now heading into turn number 10, I think a bit of lap time being lost there, as we see a car off circuit just on the right of the pitch and disappearing behind. As de Jong makes his way onto the oval banking, powering out to the turn 10 hairpin, you can see with not all of the width of the circuit being used, just costing him a little bit of time here as he powers his way through turns 11 and 12, up through the gearbox, up into top gear, 5th gear it is, as he heads in towards the bus stop chicane. Now looking for his brake mark on the right hand side, and you can see the number 2 board there, giving them the signal to turn the car in, and when we say a brake mark, they're more just lifting off the throttle rather than any brake application. 5th gear all the way through, and as he felt the car catch between the apexes, got back to full throttle to set it down and charge on through, and now heading through the banking to turn 17 and 18, 2 quarters remain as he diverts off of the oval and into the chicane, braking all the way down the 3rd gear, straight line the 2 apexes, make sure not to hit the 2nd apex too high, and that is a lap of the Charlotte Roval as brought to you by Tito de Jong as he crosses the line there and moves back up to P20. But as he heads on around here, a lovely lap there from the Flying Dutchman as he heads on through at turn number 2 and down towards 3 and 4. Well, right now we do look from him to one of our other drivers on circuit, and that is Marcel Brinchviller. As we can see here, the German making his way down towards the bus stop chicane in a little bit of a slipstream train there, and find himself in the middle of it by looking to the number 5 car as he comes on through the bank, and we're trying to go around the outside there. We're trying to see who that is, but as they come on through, I believe that may be a Wade that's making his way on around, and Wade they're capitalising on the toe, and as they head down towards the turn 19 to 20 chicane, that's not Nathan Wade, that's the number 69 car, Chris Wayne, in fact, as Wayne heading across the, in fact that's not 69 of Wayne, even though the number on the front looks like a 69. I believe in fact that may have been at Perez there, that was Christian Perez, my apologies, and Perez not improving. Rory meanwhile improving to P2 on what is now a lap that's only 2/10 of our pole sitter, but the pole lap at the moment, provisional pole 39.854, and the only driver to set a 39 in this qualifying session with just under half the session remaining is Perez, as meanwhile behind we see the number 5 car there of what is Brinchviller continue to follow on and trying to stay in the double draft, and can he use that to his advantage as he comes on through? Well, as we look to Perez making his way on down and around, and Perez keeping it smart, and we'll have the opportunity to catch up with Perez in the build up to tonight in the season open. I asked him what's his ambition or target for this season. It simply was, and I can't repeat one particular word in regards to what he had to say, but I can abridge it for you. It was kick everyone, or sorry, not kick everyone, kick everyone's backside, but you can replace backside with another word you can imagine is short, but let's keep it family friendly, and it was Perez who definitely are feeling confident and looking to absolutely deliver. But as he makes his way on around, he's definitely delivering from the outset here, and I think that confidence is very well placed. But of course qualifying is one aspect of the day, and then the racing is another part. But again, when you can be this fast in qualifying, I think you are sending a bit of message to the field. Oh goodness me, and too much apex curve there, Perez. I think a bit too much confidence in carrying on through, and in the end the car bouncing, and that's what happens when you get it wrong. And Perez being launched into the stratosphere there, coming through turn 15 to 16, and you can see that nasty race blue curve catching him out. And will now all the drivers will be aware of that, they'll have heard it's happened, and therefore they'll be will be grateful for the fact he's been able to tow to the pits and can immediately go back out. Drivers all okay, and cars automatically repaired, but nobody wants to make that mistake. As we see at Beckhouse, meanwhile, making his way to the end of this lap, currently P6, we can see quite a gap opening up in the top 10 of the field, whereby it is the top 3 in particular, separated by only 2/10 between Perez, McCrory and Wade. And then we do have Rodriguez in a little bit of a lonely P4 at the moment, as we do look to own Rodriguez as they make the way on around. And the interesting thing here is currently 1.5 tenths off of Wade, but also 2.5 tenths faster than Tufts, who's in P5. And that is a bit of a no man's land here for the P4 driver. And I wonder if Daniel Tufts is just trying to find those couple attempts right now, which will get him a bit closer onto that second row of the grid, because as we do see the number 34 driver making his way on down and around and coming into what is turn 7 and 8 here. I don't think he's got the confidence at his disposal, but he's just trying to find that last little bit of lap time that will give him the final inches he needs in order to be able to creep onto that second row, at least threaten Rodriguez at the very end of this qualifying session. And he'll need to find that time, because Beckhouse right now only half a tenth off by comparison, and then we have a further 2.5 tenths to what is Clark Williams in the number 98 car, as Williams makes his way into turn number 6. And it's interesting how we're seeing groups of 3 drivers at the moment in terms of those lap times, and it's only when we get to about P8 with Jeff Randall, we'll look at P8 down to what is effectively the, I would say all the way down to P23. We have got Randall ahead of his peers all the way down to what is there, in fact, Tito de Jong in P24 now, and P9 through to P24, or what is a grand total of 16 drivers separated by 1.5 seconds. You do the mathematics, that's less than a tenth on average between driver, so we really do have a tight midfield. And what that is, I think, going to do, particularly here today, it means not necessarily in the sprint race, I think our fastest drivers may break away and end up in their own little envelopes of battles, but it's going to make the feature really interesting, because whoever in that midfield ends up finishing inside the top 10 in the sprint, they are going to have the hardest thing on their plate in terms of needing to fend off the fastest drivers from the qualifying session. But then also those drivers who are fast in the qualifying session will have to deal with the fact they're going to have a mid-pack salivate at the prospect of taking points off them and places early on. Oh, could it be a bit of an instant there, as I think there was a snap to the brakes for, well, not Randall, but the driver he came into contact with, and I think that was Vaughan Roberts who was trying to break the car down, and Randall being caught out there. Well, unfortunate for the pair of them, with just over 2 minutes left now, where it's definitely coming down to do or die time when it comes to setting those qualifying laps. And have we got anybody on a major improvement right now? Well, as we do see here, our driver's making the way on the round, and that is Kevin Budden as he makes his way up through turns 5 and 6. Well, right now, the number 18 driver keeping it calm and collected in the 16th place with 1.5 seconds between himself and that overall pole lap. But I think he'll be pleased with the fact he finds himself right in the middle of the field with 31 drivers in attendance, and we've yet to get lap times from Frattini or Vaughan Roberts. Both drivers still trying to deliver those laps out there, and that does mean that they're a little bit compromised with regards to the fact that we're starting right from the back of the field at this point. But we do have a transition of pole sitter. It is now the fin of Bury, who's gone into pole with a 39.771, and it is less than a tenth faster than Perez here. I definitely think we have got a top 2 shootout for that pole position, but either way it goes, we could imagine that everybody behind right now may just be looking up with stars in their eyes, thinking that these two are Bury and Perez, and Christian Perez in fact in the pit lane has decided to leave the car. So Perez has had enough, and with only a minute to go, I do believe there's no overtime in qualifying. So when we see the clock strike 15 minutes, that is qualifying complete. No ifs, no buts. No more lap times can be set at that point, even if our drivers are on a lap. So therefore now our drivers will be looking to come to the end of laps as soon as possible. And we do look to David Devine here, as we can see the number 53 driver making his way on through turn number 10 very shortly, currently down in P27, 4.1 seconds off of the pole lap. But again, this series caters for drivers of all skill levels, and you never know how a driver may improve. Indeed, it could just be for Devine and a number of other drivers such as Easy. Perhaps this circuit doesn't favour them, but future rounds and future venues will definitely favour them by comparison, and that's the big unknown, of course, here. We're going to see lap times set by drivers today, which may put them the favourites in terms of pace, but we go to Sebring next week, and we may find that field is completely inverted, given the fact that a lot of drivers may have different preferences with regards to the Sebring circuit compared to the Charlotte Motor Roval. But as we do see Devine head on through the final banking here, well, the clock's about to strike 15 minutes. I don't think he's going to get this lap done, and the checker flag comes out. That's qualifying complete, and it is what is Rasmus Rory on pole. So as we head to the grid then, ladies and gentlemen, this is how they line up for the opening round of the season. Rasmus Rory takes pole position there by 800ths over Christian Perez from Astro Racing. On row number 2, it's Nathan Wade and Yona Rodriguez, the Firebird Sim Racing driver, just creeping onto the second row ahead of Speedwater Cali's Mark Beckhouse, who starts off a third row, joined by Daniel Tufts. On the fourth row, it's Stefan Herman and Remco Pleasure, the RT Racing driver there, getting into P8 ahead of Clark Williams, who starts off a fifth row, joined by Gone Skipping Racing's Jeff Randall, who completes our top 10. In what is P11, Ryan Jackson, the privateer, joined by Stefan Krumpholz in P12. And as we look beyond the 6th row and onto the 7th row, it is David Burns, the privateer, who is joined by Marcel Brinchweiler. We then see what is a Brody van der Meerden, who starts P15, the STN driver, joined by Skips Racing Kevin Budden, with then Terry McGrath starting P17, joined by Wojtek Protozik, and we can see then on the 10th row, we have Chris Wayne from Gone Skipping Racing, joined by Sleepy Cat Racing's Peter van der Noord. We then have on row number 11, Paul Smithhurst and what is Paolo Anzioso joined together there, and the Auto Motorsport Blue driver will be doing everything he can to try and go on the offensive for a top 20 early on. And on row number 12, it's the pair of AJ Campbell for Auto Motorsport, joined by RT Racing's Titus de Jong. We then come on to row number 13, and we can see it's Benjamin Harris, the privateer, joined by Ollie Pimley, the privateer just behind. And then we have the privateer pair of Dave Devine and Ludwig Sau on row number 14. Row 15 goes to Nigel Easy and Dario Frattini. And on the final row of the grid, the 16th of the final row, it's Nick Vaughan Roberts, who starts P31 and last. But as our drivers get ready and set then, well, we are only about 10 seconds away from having the lights out procedure. And the question is, who will be the one who takes the opening win of the season? Well, now with the clock ticking down, get yourself set, ladies and gentlemen. It's time for the lights. In fact, I do believe we have a slight delay to the light procedure. A couple of drivers still yet to get on the grid. In fact, we have got the lights now. There's 1 red light, 2 red lights, 3 red lights, 4 red lights, 5 red lights. And it's lights out and away we go for the season opener of the Skip Barber Challenge Trophy as Rasmus Rory looks to get a flying start into turn number 1. And as they make the way into the opening left-hander, he covers off Wade, but Wade up the inside of Perez immediately here, going on the offensive as they roar their way into turn number 2. Look at Rodriguez behind as well, trying to get into the fight as they come into 3, breaking the way on down. And meanwhile, as they all come in a little bit further back, we can see that Brunschwiller moving up the field already as they come on through turns 3 and 4 and head up towards 5, 6 shortly. But coming on through, we can see how the privateer right now continues to try and make ground. But meanwhile, a bit further up the road, Jeff Randall under pressure from Clark Williams. In terms of Clark Williams pushing it backwards to what is Ryan Jackson. Jackson going around the outside. I think there's a bit of contact there between Randall and Jackson. Jackson now being attacked around the outside by Krumholz into turns 7 and 8. But as they come on through the long left-hander here, they're side by side all the way through. We're in that Rodriguez moved into P3 ahead of Wade at the front of the field. But meanwhile, Krumholz holding off the challenger Jackson as they head up towards turn number 10. But heading on to the brakes very shortly here. All our drivers now starting to settle down into the centre rhythm. As meanwhile, we can see it there. David Burns looking to try and move on as well. The privateer from Scotland looking to go on the offensive versus Jackson. Can't quite find it initially as they power the way on through onto the banking. And now the tempo will change into something that's a little bit calmer. And everybody will be looking at the slipstream. But meanwhile, we look to the front of the field. And we can see here Nathan Wade batting his way back past Johan Rodriguez as they head through the bus stop chicane and bouncing their way over. And goodness me, catching the car at the last possible moment, and Wade they're making his way back to P4 with that mistake. And we can see Rodriguez moving on through, but it's Rory who leads this race as they head down towards the final chicane for the first time of asking under race conditions. And the Finn here drifting in, a little bit of lock up there on the brakes. He came through, but he leads as they go on to lap number 2. So heading down into the opening corner here, it's Rory ahead of Perez, followed by Rodriguez in P3. Then it's Nathan Wade P4, followed by Beckhouse, then Herman in P6, Daniel Tubbs P7, Remco Kleiser in P8, and it's Jeff Randall and Clark Williams who complete your top 10. Behind best the rest is Ryan Jackson as he continues to try and cut his way back up into the top 10. But meanwhile, further back, we've got Paul Smithhurst here battling hard with what is Stefan Krumholz and Chris Wayne. Wayne just in front there as Smithhurst trying to hold on the inside here versus Wayne. Looking for the move, but Wayne, they're cutting him off as they come on around. But now as they tow their way out of turn number 4, we can see there how Smithhurst having to really cover hard versus what is Krumholz. They come up towards turn number 5. We bring the battle box up in the bottom right hand corner of your screen so you keep track of the battle you're seeing on screen at the time. And as they make their way out of turn 6, in towards turn 7 and 8 here, we're a bit further back. Krumholz now going on around and on the inside there versus Peter van der Noord. As we can see the Dutchman trying to make the ground. And in fact, that is Nick Vaughan Roberts being passed by the Sleepy Cat Racing driver of van der Noord, who's running a tribute livery to the time that Jaguar was in Formula 1. And as they make their way up towards turn number 10, once again, we're now up into P19. It's van der Noord and continuing his way up the order. He's gained 1 place so far. Meanwhile, Nick Vaughan Roberts, by comparison, has gained 11, having started from the very back of the grid. And we do have in the pit lane, we have Sau and Utazek. We also have Frattini, who's had to retire due to technical issues with the car. As meanwhile, further back here, we can see the battle between Benjamin Harris and Dave Devine for what is P25, with Devine getting ahead. But meanwhile, we look up to the front of the field, and we've got drama at the front, and that is Rasmus Rory off camera coming out of the bus stop chicane, who's had it all gone wrong. And we will very shortly give you a replay of what exactly has happened to the Finn. But meanwhile, that means that it's now Christian Perez who leads this race, going on to lap number 3. Of course, it's not going to be defined by laps the distance, it's defined by time, which is 20 minutes. But as the laps continue to accrue here, Perez right now in a very comfortable lead with 41.042 being the fastest lap in this race so far. And well, right now the Spaniard continues to put the lap times in. But meanwhile, as we look a bit further back, we've got Pimley versus Titus de Jong here, and Pimley up the inside of de Jong and moves into P18 as he comes on through turns 1 and 2 and into 3. But as we do take a look back to what exactly happened to our previous race leader, well, this is what happened to Rasmus Rory. Oh, goodness me. Oh, my good Lord. And that was contact, I do believe, with the car of Rodriguez getting picked up there. But there's a bit more to the story than that in terms of how it started. And in fact, as we tried to take a look back further, was they making their way down into the chicane, very leading here, loses the car slightly and bounces over the raised curb, and then we can see how Johan Rodriguez just coming on through, and well, Vuri had no control of the car at that point. He was the passenger in the car. A nasty moment there, and to give you an idea from Rodriguez's perspective, this was the Firebird Sim Racing driver who's coming on through in the battle for P3. You can see Vuri loses it there, takes the low line, and then it just gets clipped. He tries to power his way past the scene of the incident, but unfortunate for both drivers there, and definitely that will harm their race as we continue to see the race in action press on. But as we see Pimley here still battling up with Titus Young. Young going on the left of your pitch there, going high into the bus stop chicane, getting back ahead of the Brit and the Dutchman, and the Briton continue to fight hard. Meanwhile, looking further up the road, we do see David Burns, the Scottishman here, battling with Brian Jackson. This is for P8, but they settle their differences under braking into the chicane before they make the way up towards the start-finish line. A quarter of this race complete. We've still got 3/4 of it to go. Plenty of time left. That's 15 minutes. And whilst the lap times are continuing to come on down here with the fuel coming out the cars, we do say hello to a couple of you in the YouTube chat there, including Dan Shuring and also the Senior Link. And well, as we do see the Scotsman of Burns here keeping up with Jackson at bay for now. Well, of course, it has been a dramatic start to the season, and we're not even halfway through our opening round of racing, and we've already had a couple of major incidents. And we did have an instance for Ludwig Sauer and also Wittig in the opening lap, and we will try and take a look back at those very shortly as to what happened to our drivers. We've got 4 drivers in the pit lane plus 1 retirement, and we'll Brunchviller also in the pit lane as a result of an incident by the sounds of things, but as many as possible are trying to carry on with that fast repair. And of course, if you can be out there, you can give yourself an opportunity to get some points early on, and you never know what can happen. You could potentially have an opportunity to be in that reverse grid, or at least closer, for the purposes of starting on the grid in the feature race. But as we look back here from the gearbox of Speedworld Academy's Mark Beckhouse, finding himself in P2 now, and under attack from Nathan Wade as they make the way on through. Wade there with the tow as they come on down, and as they head on through, well, Wade's just going to get simply ahead there, keeping his goal. And Beckhouse, I get the feeling, running quite a lot of downforce on that car, because the transition of the speed there between Wade and Beckhouse was quite alarming in terms of just how much speed Wade picked up in short order. You can see Beckhouse closing here little by little as they head through the bank in the 1780. Didn't have the best run through the bus stop chicane, to be fair, but I think Beckhouse has put the car all together for the corners and is going to lose out naturally on the straights. He picks the speed up, but as they make the way on through, we do see Anzioso there staying over to the outside, staying on the right of the picture. It'll be the left as the camera spins round. He's down in P27, just trying to avoid being in the way of any of the race leaders right now, as he has been lapped by the top 6 with at the top 5 drivers, with Stefan Herman, the P5 driver there, the privateer, as they come into turn number 4. But coming on through, of course, Anzioso will try and tuck in the toe behind them, but meanwhile, Speeder Wondro is not going to be tucking in the toe. Well, now he'll be trying to battle for P2, but he drops to P3. Then the run into turn number 5. Nathan Wade will run wide as he came out of 4, took to the grass, and the car crept away for him. He's caught it in time to avoid the barrier, but battling hard here versus Beckhouse. And Beckhouse right now, I think, started to become a little bit of a cork in the bottle, as Perez, your race leader, is now 3.2 seconds clear of this battle and is showing no signs of abating with regards to his advantage. But as we do see the battle for his P2 through to P3 carrying on here. Meanwhile, a bit further back, we can tell you the battle between Titus de Jong and Ollie Pimley has settled in the favour of Pimley for the time being. Pimley up to his P17 on circuit, as we do have Daniel Tufts, who's had to retire from this race, unfortunately. And we do believe that's due to technical issues with the car. But as our drivers power the way on down here, Wade once again sweeping through there with the speed on the toe, and that just goes to show you the difference. They bounce their way through the bus stop chicane, and we've got a car there that's got up in front, and I believe that was Ludwig Sauer, who was a lap down after an open lap incident, and Sauer involved in another incident. We take a look back at what happened to Ludwig Sauer. Well, coming on through at the chicane here, and I think the car's going to clip that blue curb. It does indeed. It just unsettles the car, slides sideways, and at that point, with the amount of sliding, those tyres are going to have a huge flat spot on them, as I do believe also we had a bit of evasiveness there from Putuzek, the driver, Putuzek, who just had to try and steer clear. But as we return to your live race pictures now, ladies and gentlemen, well, Wade is still ahead of Beckhouse in that battle for P2. But meanwhile, behind, we look to Ryan Jackson, who's in a bit of contact there with, I believe, that is none other than Van der Meerden, and the two drivers are making contact in a very short sequence of corners, when in the end Jackson backing off there and letting Van der Meerden take the place back. But that was very close to call. Both drivers could have been in tears at that point, and I think it was the drivers behind, including Chris Wayne and also Kevin Budgeon, who are just looking at that and thinking, what on earth has just happened? But as they make the way down towards turns 7 and 8, well, the Skip's Racing driver here will rub his hands together, and I think there's an opportunity to potentially go on the offensive if the two drivers in front continue to battle hard. But a little bit of lock up there for the Briton. He's got to be careful that, of course, won't want to take too much life out of the tyres. He does have a number of drivers right behind him as we jump on board here with the privateer of Nick Vaughan-Roberts, and you can see the Welshman continuing to close up through the order. He's coming from the back of the field, we should point out, from P31 on the grid. He's up to P14. Yes, perhaps he's been aided by a couple of retirements of drivers, for instance, that are well up the road that have seen drivers drop out the standings. But at the same time, nobody can deny it here. This man right now is going for the overtake award as he makes his way down towards the bus stop chicane behind Paul Smithhurst, decides to back off there as they head on through, just playing it smart. He doesn't need to gamble too much, as we see somebody's gone round in front and up towards the wall, and that is Van der Meerden who's got it wrong, we do believe, with a slide there. That's Rudy Van der Meerden, and we'll take a look back at what happened to the driver. But meanwhile, Vaughan-Roberts here getting very close back to Smithhurst, with Wayne just in front as well. But you can see how the trio of drivers here all trying to size one another up, and Smithhurst really does have the unfathomable challenge right now of a rock and hard place. He's got the rock of Wayne in front and the hard place of offensive of Vaughan-Roberts behind, as we have got some drivers who've had a bit of an incident just in front, as we're trying to get an idea of who that is who's lost it just ahead. And I do believe that may have been an instant between what was Budden and also McGrauther, that is going to cause the whole field to concertina up in the battle for the final spots inside the top 10, as Vaughan-Roberts there goes a little bit wide. Smithhurst meanwhile looking on the inside of Wayne as Vaughan-Roberts catches the car, and will Smithhurst look for the move? No, he can't. Meanwhile, Budden getting past Jackson just up the road in the battle for what is a P8, but as they all come on through here, it's very close. It's 6 drivers all battling in close sequence. They come through turns 7 and 8, and we're at the back of this group with Vaughan-Roberts. But as we look up towards the front of it right now, and it is what is here, Kevin Budden making his way through turn 9 up towards 10, and you see the Skip's Racing driver here trying to do every his power as we look back towards the nose there of Jackson, and Jackson recently being passed and moved through the infield, and now as they make the way back onto the oval, well, the number 18 driver, all that Virginia, trying to give everything he's got here as they make the way on through, and you can see going high there and going quite slowly. We're not quite sure who that is who's gone higher. I do believe it might be a driver just trying to steer clear who might be a lap down, but meanwhile as they come in towards the bus stop chicane here, where it's all about consistency once again, and who will fall foul of the chicane this time around? Doesn't look as though anybody will do so. I think everybody keeping it nice and clean, as I believe that was Anzioso who was steering clear and up high, but meanwhile we look to Vaughan-Roberts who's trying to go around the outside and high on Smithhurst there. Meanwhile Wayne a bit slow on the run through the bank, and now Smithhurst is being boxed in. Vaughan-Roberts looking for a 2 for 1 here under braking. He cuts over the apex go. I'm not sure if that's in track limits, but if it is, it's a bold move. He gets 1, he gets 2, and Smithhurst here finds himself again boxed to the outside, and Nick Vaughan-Roberts up to P10 with half the race complete, 8 minutes to go. And can anybody stop this man? Well, I think he's serving a slowdown for that cut at turn 19, so then he can slow himself, he'll stop himself it would seem. But what a brilliant attempt at a pass and brilliant racing between the trio, as now Smithhurst chasing after Wayne, and this is effectively for a reverse pole position in the feature race, and Wayne right now is the one who will receive the accolade if things finish as they stand. But as they make the way up through turns 5 and 6, the drivers right now knowing that they're pushing these tyres hard, and well, the tyres will last the duration, they'll last the full 40 minutes, but when you're pushing them this aggressively, they will start to lose that grip factor as the race goes on. And of course, every time you push them hard on the brakes, every time you feel a little slide, it just adds a bit of excess heat temperature into the compound, and that leads to the car essentially not gripping up as well. And Wayne will be wary of that as they make the way out to the oval at turn number 10 and onwards towards the bus stop chicane very shortly. But as they make the way roaring on through, meanwhile we must briefly look back to the battle for P2 here. Of course, Perez is now 5.5 seconds up the road from this pair, but it is Nathan Wade who's under pressure from Stefan Herman, as Herman keeping himself right there glued to the back of Wade, and as they make the way on through, meanwhile, oh my good lord, and what has happened here to Remco Plessia and also David Burns? There's been a major incident and we get an immediate replay. Well, making their way up towards the bus stop chicane here. Whatever's happened, it's been a disaster for the pair. Heading on in and through the corners there and place it over the curb. Oh my good lord! And Will trying to go round the outside of the bus stop chicane. No grip there, and the car just simply slid into the tyre barrier, and Burns coming into the scene of the instant and had nowhere to go. Because if we take a look back at that from David Burns' perspective, well, this is what the Scotsman saw as he made his way in. Now you see Placer initially going a little bit wide there and then trying to catch the car. The car lets go, and Burns at that point, he can't slow down, but if he was to slow down, he'd still go into the instant. And you see the drivers behind all taking evasive action from the debris, but in the end, the two drivers being caught up in that in a nasty instant and putting them effectively out of this race. But meanwhile, as we return to live pictures, well, a lot of drivers here gaining place as a result of incidents, including AJ Campbell here, the Charlotte Motorsport driver from Germany, battling with Jackson right now. Ryan Jackson behind and closing with only a quarter of this race to go by the time they get up to turn number 10. There'll only be 5 minutes left on the clock, but as they head on down to the round and into turn 7 and 8, they do have Nigel Easy who's closing on them little by little. And as we look back up towards P2, well, now Nathan Wade has the company of Stefan Herman, and well, now as they head up towards the bus stop chicane this time, this chicane catching so many drivers out. Oh, goodness me, and Herman there almost losing it as well. They've got to be so careful for the simple reason, much like we just had happened to Remco Plesier, if they get it wrong and the car goes up into the air, they're not going to catch the car anymore, and they just end up in the barrier. But Wade here keeping it on the right side of risk, as meanwhile Jeff Randall in P4 here have moved all the way up through the top 10, and plenty of drivers now really looking at places, and it really has been a race of consistency just as much as has been pace. As we see Stefan Krumholz here battling hard with Wayne and making his way out the inside, gets the move done there for Artel Motorsport, and now Vaughan Roberts there being squeezed to the wall as Roberts gets into the top 10 for the first time now. He wants P9, he goes round the outside of Wayne, he makes it look straightforward. I can tell you it's anything but that, but Vaughan Roberts moves up into P9, and as they make the way into turn number 3, well, right now Anzioso P23 looks on behind this quartet of drivers, thinking, why am I not on the lead lap, as they make the way up towards turns 5 and 6. But it's definitely a thriller so far, and I think there's still a couple of pages in the book with regards to this race before it's all said and done. But as they make the way through turns 5 and 6, we can see a little bit further up the road, well, right now Kevin Abudjan meanwhile trying to keep what is there McGrowther behind, and McGrowther doing everything to hound his rival in front in the battle for a top 5 spot. But as they make the way up towards turn number 10, another lock up there for Virginia as he makes his way into the apex, and that's the thing now, where they push so hard on these tyres in order to try and make moves early on. It does look as though that tyre command is starting to bite back. McGrath, meanwhile, just keeping it calm, keeping it consistent. He's gained 11 places, much like his rival in front of him. The two of them there gaining plenty of places, and well, the only driver who really goes beyond them is Vaughan Roberts with 22 places gained so far. A little bit of a peak of a move there from McGrath, can't quite find it, backs off as they come on through, but he just goes into the air. Goodness me, that makes my stomach turn every time when we ride on board to the commentary booth here. I can only imagine McGrath right now, as in fact I think that's taken the suspension out, because he's limping into the pit lane, and in fact he's got to come in. The damage is too much on the car, and that is going to destroy his chances of finishing inside the top 10 here in today's sprint race in round number 1. But meanwhile, we look to Stefan Herman, who's found his way past Wade, and well, with approximately 2 laps to go, given the time remained just under 3 minutes, and the lap time being an average of 1 minute 40, Herman here now having to hold on versus Wade, and well, Perez is 6.1 seconds clear, and nobody is catching Perez come to the end of this one, unless Perez gets it wrong. No commentators curse, please. But as our drivers here battle on for P2, we've also got a battle further behind here between Krumholz and Vaughan and Roberts, as Roberts goes around the outside there of Krumholz to defend what is P7, and right now Smithhurst behind him, P6, will be looking in his rear view mirror, and I think he'll be rubbing his eyes together if he's got a chance to, thinking, is that Vaughan Roberts behind? And the short answer is yes, it certainly is. But as they make the way through turns 7 and 8 here, we can see going a little bit deep. That was Devine who's steering clear, as he is on a lap down, so blue flag's waving for him. But meanwhile, Chris Wayne on the back of this battle, and we also have Anzioso there, who's getting nice and close to the back of Devine in the battle for P23. So we've got 2 drivers who are effectively a lap down, and they're fighting for position as Anzioso looks up the inside, and it goes wrong for Anzioso as the car goes round, and I believe Dave Devine just about survives that little bit of contact between the two of them, if there was. As meanwhile, we see Easy going slowly there, and Dave Devine moves up into P22, and as they head on through, meanwhile, we look back to your race leader as he comes on through to go to the final lap. It's Christian Perez, and the Astro Racing driver here very comfortably in the lead. 5.5 seconds here back in the car, if it would say. Meanwhile, Herman versus Wade. I think it's going to go all the way down to the wire as they head on to what is the 12th and final lap of this race. But heading on through turn number 2 and out towards 3. Meanwhile, Vaughan Roberts has found his way past Smithhurst off camera. We'll take a look back at that very shortly, but Herman here safe for now. And in fact, we do have Smithhurst trying to come back here versus Vaughan Roberts on the exit of turn 20 and into turn 1. Smithhurst on the inside. He covers off the apex there, and as they head their way in towards turn number 2, Vaughan Roberts backs off as they make the way down and heading into 3-4. Vaughan Roberts comes back to the inside. Smithhurst holds the outside. He'll know that he'll have the natural racing line here through the right-hander of 4, but he'll be made to go as wide as possible as Vaughan Roberts gives him space, but no more than he needs to. And as they head into 5-6, I think Vaughan Roberts has got this done, because right now Smithhurst not able to come back. And look at Crimmel's looking up the inside there. It's a little bit too late to the apex there for Crimmel's, but trying to threaten as they make the way towards the end of the infield section. That's the hairpins, of course, and Smithhurst here again sandwiched between two very fast drivers. He's no slouch by comparison, to be fair, but it does look as though Smithhurst's pace just started to decline a little bit, being out of racing line order as he makes his way into his turn number 10. Meanwhile, behind Beckhouse up the inside of Chris Wayne on the exit turn number 9, but meanwhile we do look up to Stephen Herman here, who's trying to keep Nathan Wade behind. They make the way through the bus stop chicane here, and the privateer right now, he's got Wade all over him as Wade goes high. It's going to be a drag race to the inside of the final chicane. Wade gets a nose ahead, but meanwhile, heading on through the final corners, the checkered flag awaits him. He's been faultless from start to finish. It is Christian Perez who takes the win here today in round number 1 of the season, ahead of Nathan Wade, who finishes P2, making the move on Herman on the inside into the final corners. Herman P3, and it'll be Jeff Randall who comes on home P4 there, ahead of what will be Kevin Budden, who comes off home P5, and then it will be Nick Vaughan Roberts who crosses the line at P6. He's done it, ladies and gentlemen. He's come from P31 to P6, ahead of Crummels and Smithhurst, and it'll be Mark Beckhouse who's P9, ahead of Chris Wayne, who takes the final top 10 spot and will therefore be your reverse grid pole sitter for the feed race that's coming up in the near future for round number 2. It is then Peter van der Noord who's best the rest, P11 there, and we do have Benjamin Haas, Titus de Jong P12, P13, Ryan Jackson P14, and then it will be AJ Campbell P15 ahead of Terry McGraw P16 there, and then Clark Williams shortly coming on home on the lead lap, still yet to finish his race, but given the instance and mistakes we've seen from drivers, we have seen the field space out to a degree, but Williams will come on home at P17 in the end when all is said and done. And then it will be David Burns who's recovered to P18 after that nasty incident between himself and Remco Ploser. Of course, he came into the seat of the incident, but Williams there P17, and then it will be Burns who just holds off Ploser to the line, I think, unless he's buried it to the wall. No, he's not. He's got it right, and he comes on home at P18 ahead of Remco Ploser, and that is all the drivers who finished this race on the lead lap. But as we transition now to the 5-minute warm-up for our second race of today, we've got a bit of time. We're just going to take you through the race results from our first round of the season. So after one race of 2 here at the Charlotte Motor Speedway, the Roval in particular, in round 1, we've seen that Christian Perez taking the win in the end for Astro Racing by 3 seconds over Nathan Wade, with the privateer beating fellow privateer Stephen Herman to line P2, P3 for them. Jeff Randall, P4 there, the Gone Skipping Racing driver, making great gains over the course of the race, ahead of Kevin Budden at P4, sorry, not P4, P5 we should say, the Skips Racing driver, and the gap between himself and Randall standing at 8 seconds. Then it was a 6-second gap to Nick Vaughan Roberts, who came from the very back of the field to finish P6, ahead of Stefan Krumholz of Arton Motorsport, who held off Paul Smithhurst to line, who was in P8, and then Mark Beckhouse and Chris Wayne complete the top 10 there, with the Speed World Academy driver just keeping the God Skipping Racing driver behind him to the very end. And then it was in P11, none other than, as we see, his name has been cut off of the screen very slightly, ladies and gentlemen, and we will need to try and get that fixed, but we can do see it's Peter van der Noord at P11 there for Sleepy Cat Racing, ahead of Benjamin Harris, and there's Titus de Jong, Ryan Jackson, and AJ Campbell, who completed the top 15. Terry McGraw P16 ahead of Clark Williams, with David Burns at P18, and as we continue our way on down the results, Remco Pleister was the last driver to finish on the lead lap after that nasty instant midway through the race, P19 for the RT Racing driver, and then finishing a lap down, completed the top 20. It was none other and then our driver from the Netherlands, or Rodi van der Meulen. Vonda Maiden, and then we can see in P21 what is Wojciech Prosik ahead of Dave Devine, with Nigel Easy P23 ahead of Arto Motorsport Blues, Paolo Anzioso, and then Rasmus Rory at P25 after looking so strong in qualifying. Indeed, the start of the race, a single mistake at the bus stop chicane costing the Finn dearly, and then it was Ollie Pimley P26 ahead of Daniel Tufts with Ludwig Sauer P28, and as we continue our way on down the finishing positions, Marcel Brunschwiller P29 ahead of Johan Rodriguez, and then Dario Frattini not able to take to the grid, P31 there for FPM Oval Maltine. But those are the finishing positions, and of course, as a reminder, as we look back up to the very top of the standings there, if you look back up to P10 in particular, Chris Wayne will be your reverse grid pole sitter for the feature race, which is only 2.5 minutes away. But as we get ready to go once again, ladies and gents, but of course we look to the schedule here, and well, you've seen round number 1 already. We've had the 20-minute sprint, and we are due for the 40-minute feature race, and we are just at this time 2.5 minutes away, so we're running a tiny bit behind schedule, but I'm sure you won't mind a slight delay of what is 5 minutes compared to the standard schedule, because we will be back underway, and indeed we'll be seeing who is able to prevail in the 40-minute feature shortly. But as our drivers get themselves set currently, we've got a couple of drivers out of the circuit here in preparation for what is round number 2, and there's Ollie Pimley in particular, the privateer, making his way on around and down towards the bus stop chicane. And as he gets himself set, we need many a driver here just keeping their head down and doing everything in their power to get themselves set up and reset, or alternatively carry that mental momentum into the next race. And well, when I had the opportunity to speak to Ollie in particular in the build-up to tonight, and I asked him about his goals for the season, it was just simply to enjoy racing the Skippy after a break and try to keep up with the big boys. Well, I definitely think he's been enjoying the racing. I think he'll look to try and go a little bit further today in order to keep up with the fastest drivers out there. But Pimley definitely looking smooth and looking consistent. And as we can see him heading into turn 1, we also do look to Daniel Tufts here heading on around right now in a very lovely dark coloured livery machine. The combination of orange and black there looking very nice on the Ghost Racer car. But as he comes on through there, the Briton, well, for him, it was an interesting race. But he'll be hoping it's a little bit less eventful in the feature. He's able to make a bit more ground. But you never know, of course, what can happen. But with only a minute before we head to the grid for our second race of the day, indeed a lot of drivers I think will be going for a mental reset and we'll be thinking about what can they do. As we actually do get confirmation with regards to Daniel Tufts, it was a blue screen with regards to his computer, and therefore a technical retirement from the first race. Well, he's back for the second one, but it will mean he'll be starting a long way down the order. But as he gets himself set here, we are now only 30 seconds away from going racing, and we do see a good number of you there in the YouTube chat, including Rody Note Maiden, who's saying luck didn't help me laugh out loud. Indeed, unfortunate for yourself, Rody, but we look forward to seeing how you get on in round number 2. But as we do see Tufts making his way in towards the opening quarter once again, well, of course, I think all eyes are going to be on this man. Just what can he do now that he'll be started inside the top 10? Vaughan Roberts, the man who's absolutely flying here at the Charlotte Motor Speedway. And, well, I wonder if he could be a contender for the race win. Well, the checkered flag is out on this warm-up session, and that means for all the drivers now, they'll be required to come back into the pit lane via tow or automated tow, and then we will be going to the grid for the 40-minute feature. So as the grid is set, this is how they line up for round 2 of 24. In the Skip Barber Challenge Trophy, here in the feature at Charlotte Motor Oval Speedway, we can see Chris Wayne there taking the pole position, the reverse grid pole position for Gone Skipping Racing, ahead of Mark Beckhouse, the Speed World Academy driver. Then it's Paul Smithers and Stefan Krumholz on the second row, the Artel Motorsport driver, doing well to keep Nick Vaughan Roberts behind him, hopefully, in his mind, and it will then be Kevin Budden, who lines up alongside Vaughan Roberts on the third row. Jeff Randall starts P7 for Gone Skipping Racing, joined by the privateer Stefan Herman, with Nathan Wade and Christian Perez completing the top 10. And then it is Peter van der Noord who starts P11 for Sleepy Cat Racing, joined by Benjamin Harris. On row number 7, it'll be the pair of Titus de Jong and Ryan Jackson, followed up by AJ Campbell and Terry McGrauther, with then on the 9th row of the grid, Clark Williams and David Burns. Remco Pleiser and Rody van der Meerden start on P19 and P20. That is the 10th row there, as we do Butcher van der Meerden surnamed very slightly. And then on the 11th row, it is Wojciech alongside him, Dave Devine, who starts on the 11th row. We then have the pair of Nigel Easy and Paolo Anzioso, who start on the 12th row, followed by on the 13th row, the pairing of Rasmus Vuori, who's got to come all the way from the back of the field, but we're looking to do so as rapidly as possible. And keep your eyes out for the privateer. I'm sure they'll be coming through the field much like a knife through hot butter, with Ollie Pimley alongside him, P26. Daniel Tufts, P27, alongside him on the 14th row, Ludwig Sauer, and it's Marcel Brinchvilla, joined by Yona Rodriguez, who start on the 15th row. And then last but not least, for FPM Oval Tamine, it is Dario Frattini, who starts P31, should they have been able to get the technical issues with the car fixed. But that is how the grid lines up, ladies and gentlemen, and as they get ready to go once again, well, we do wait here in earnest. It'll be Chris Wayne who looks to try and get the good run down into turn number 1. But is it all going to go the way of Wayne, or will he find that Beckhouse, Smithhurst or Krumholz will be able to find the way on around early? Well, we are only seconds away from the lights. No more than about 30 seconds now, as Will Drive's absolutely itching to hit the throttle pedal. It's going to be the 40-minute feature. There is going to be a pit stop in here for fuel, but not necessarily for tyres. And who is going to be able to be smart on the strategy and fast on every lap in order to bring it on home? You're only moments away from finding out. And with the gridding process complete, we await the lights. 1 red light, 2 red lights, 3 red lights, 4 red lights, 5 red lights. And it's lights out and away we go for race 2 of today, as Chris Wayne gets a good start off the line and immediately charges into turn number 1. Keeping an inside line here with Beckhouse trying to go the long way round him, cut back. Meanwhile, Smithhurst behind and Krumholz battling hard for P3 already as they make the way on past the billboard there, and as they make the way in towards turn number 3. No change inside the top 4 at the moment. Vaughan Roberts already trying to go on the offensive early on, as we're hearing that Daniel Tufts has been involved in an incident a bit further back in turn number 1 on the exit. But no major overtakes right now. Everybody's settling down nice and early here and trying to play the long game, although I say that Ollie Pimley all over the back of Paolo Anzioso as they make the way up towards turn number 5, but coming on through and into the uphill complex now, 5-6. You can see Pimley really harassing the back of his rival there, and I think needing to back off slightly. He's got the speed, but meanwhile we've got a couple of incidents further up the road. Clint Herman here going up the inside of what is Wade, as Wade steps a little bit deep there. It turns at 7 and 8, but meanwhile coming through 9 and up towards 10, that is Budden who's losing his way down the order, defend on the inside here versus Herman into turn number 10, and as they head out to the hairpin up towards the wall they go, onto the oval banking, and well in front of Wayne here. After a good start, finds himself under pressure from Beckhouse, and now we'll start to see the calibre of the straight line speed of their respective machines as they head on through towards the bus stop chicane. It's Mark Beckhouse who takes the lead. Heading on down towards the bus stop chicane. Meanwhile, it's Smithhurst who looks up the inside, and Wayne backs off there, and Smithhurst moves into P2 as they come on through and up towards turn 17 and 18 they go. Meanwhile, Vaughan Roberts continue to watch on. He's looking for the move versus Krumholz here around the outside and high as they head down towards the chicane of turns 19 and 20. Now he'll be on the inside. He's got the line set up. Jeff Randall also coming on through. Onto the brakes, Vaughan Roberts goes, and Krumholz here simply stepping wide and outside and not able to make the defence. As meanwhile, we can see Jeff Randall here now having to go defensive versus Herman having to back off versus Krumholz as they make their way into turn 1. But he goes up the inside there of the German. The Briton moves on through with Herman trying to carry on through here. Herman using what is there Randall's Baron Ram in order to be able to knock on the door and surpass Krumholz as they make the way through turn number 3 and into 4, and will Krumholz drops 2 places in the space of 2 corners as they head up towards turn number 5. But after 1 lap, it is Mark Beckhouse who leads this race, ahead of Paul Smithhurst in P2, Chris Wayne P3, Nick Vaughan Roberts in P4, ahead of Jeff Randall P5, Stephen Owen P6, followed by Stephen Krumholz P7, and then we have Nathan Wade, Kevin Budgeon and Clark Williams who complete the top 10 as they head into turn 7 and 8. Bester as Peter van der Noord P11 as he tries to break away from Titus de Jong and Christian Perez, but Perez having dropped down the order quite significantly, trying to make his way on through after losing 3 places at the start, being robbed of the line effectively from that P10 start. We said earlier, of course, the reverse grid always catches drivers out, and it always leads those tricky starts to races where you're likely to lose places just as much as gain them, and Perez having to battle hard with de Jong as they make the way on towards the bank in the turns 11 and 12. coming on through and powering their way all the way out towards the bus stop chicane. Now as they come on down here, the Astro Racing driver from Spain going high to the outside. He'll look for the move all the way round, but as he gets ready to go on to the brakes here, well, gets ahead then. De Jong not fighting it hard, but meanwhile, we've had an instant for Chris Wayne. He's had it go very, very wrong at the bus stop chicane. We're not exactly sure what's happened to Wayne, other than there's been some sort of incident or mistake, but he has been passing for multiple places as a result of it, and we are able to get you a replay of what exactly happened. Wayne coming on down here, look to Vaughan Roberts, who's just behind Wayne, and Wayne hitting the curb there, and we're not sure there's contact between the two drivers, but in fact that's also Jeff Randall getting it wrong as well. So Randall having an idea of what happened, and also in his own instant it could be said. But as we take another look back at what happened, this time from Randall's perspective, coming on through here, absolutely attacking, and the same mistake as what happened there to Wayne. I think Wayne may have been tapped on the rear by Vaughan Roberts, albeit Vaughan Roberts so close there, I don't think there's anything he can do about it, but Randall catching the car in time. And as we return to your live pictures now, ladies and gentlemen, definitely that chicane continues to catch out many a driver here, and only 4 minutes into this 40-minute race, and I wonder whether our drivers can truly afford to gamble this much in the early stages of the racing, for the simple reason, in pushing this hard so early on, you're putting yourself at risk of taking yourself out of the race before you've even made it a quarter of the way. But as our drivers head on through here and carry on what is their third lap under race conditions in this feature, meanwhile we do look to one of our drivers who's trying to carve his way through the field, and that is Rasmus Rory, as we see the Finn right in the number 4 car making his way out to turn number 10. His next target will be McGrowther, as McGrowther immediately going low, trying to break a little bit of the toe, but Rory I think is going to simply close up and then sail on past, albeit that we can find out whether McGrowther's running a little bit less rear wing, as it does look as though Rory are just closing up and not able to get close enough to make the effective pass. And potentially doing some fuel saving, may just be tucking in and rolling on the throttle behind, not using 100% throttle here in order to gain some fuel efficiency. That's another thing to be considered, but as we do see them making the way towards the end of this lap, we do look a bit further up the road here into turn number 19, and that is Budden battling with Williams as they make the way across the timing line, and this is the battle for P7, and Clark Williams just falling back a little bit as they head into turn number 1. Meanwhile, behind them, we do have Peter van der Noord, who is under pressure from Wayne and David Burns, as Burns are getting close, and van der Noord on the outside and going quite slowly there into turn 2. I wonder if there's a lift off or a slowdown penalty for van der Noord, because we wouldn't normally see him drive it like that under race conditions, and therefore I think having to deal with a slowdown. But as they make their way out to turns 3 and 4, long line to stern right now as they head up towards turns 5 and 6. Meanwhile behind, McGrowther still keeping Rory at bay as they head through the double right, but you can see with De Jong offline there, now letting McGrowther get into the fight, and this is going to give Rory a little bit of fuel to the fire with regards to trying to make a move for 2 places in one corner. But as they come out to turn 7 and 8, they all stay as they are for the time being, and I think now the trio drivers here all trying to establish themselves in the order, as De Jong has to defend here into turn number 10, goes a little bit deep out of 9, sets up the defense. McGrowther looks at the cutback, it's a nice move from McGrowther, and as they head up towards turn number 13, towards the bus stop chicane by the bank in 11-12, we're side by side all the way through, but with De Jong going high and not getting the acceleration they wanted out of the hairpin, I think now for McGrowther it's all about just simply keeping the throttle buried. But you can also see Rory look down low on the inside here of the pair of them, and in one fell swoop the Finn gains 2 places for one single pass as they make the way through the bus stop chicane and now head on towards the next chicane. But meanwhile, Peter van der Noord under pressure from David Burns here after Wayne getting on through. The Sleepy Cat racing driver continued to be pushed, as we can see behind Burns there in the, I do believe, the McLaren F1 inspired livery, if my memory's not mistaken. And as they head through turns 19 and 20, we'll head on towards another lap. These drivers settling down for a brief moment, but I can tell you what's not settling down at the front of the field. Here's your P2 driver, Paul Smithhurst, who has got Herman behind him, and as they make the way out at turn number 4, we ride on board the gearbox here of the Britain as they head into turns 5 and 6, and will Herman right now all over the back of Smithhurst as they head up towards the right hand apex of 6, come on through there, through the summit, now down into the braking zone for turns 7 and 8. You can see that Herman looking for the move, trying to tease out, trying to get Smithhurst to go a little bit deep. He gets exactly what he's looking for there, but as they cut their way into turn 9, Smithhurst holds the inside line, he can defend, but he's off racing line all the way through this. The car's unsettled, and he has to try and get the momentum back on side. He does so under braking into turn number 10, but it's very close between them as they exit out, and I think right now Herman's starting to get into Smithhurst's head in terms of putting that pressure on and getting him potentially to be close to a mistake. As they head down towards turn number 13 here, you can see Herman all over the back now, going high. He's going to be looking to the outside on the offensive here. It's too wide as they come on down. Now one of them surely will back out here. Smithhurst does the right thing. He just lets it go, and he'll try and come back in the run up towards turn number 19, and we say it's the right thing at this stage because given the duration they've got in the race, I think it's smarter to play it safe than go on the offensive, unless of course Smithhurst can't catch back up to Herman here in the draft, and indeed over the next lap finds himself losing out. But meanwhile, we've got a bit of an instant here occurring on the run through the second banking, and that is, I believe, Peter van der Noord has been involved in some sort of an instant. I wonder if that's come off the bus stop chicane. Well, we can find out very shortly. In fact, we have a replay. Making his way into the chicane there with Burns all over his rear, and as he came on through, hits the blue curb high, and that unsettles the car. Oh goodness me, Burns there. Well, I think Burns will be absolutely thanking his stars that he was not collected by the wayward Sleepy Cat racing machine, because that could have been a nightmare for the pair of them. But thankfully both drivers there have got away with it, and Van der Noord has got away quite lucky given the way the car hit off the curb. Now I had to wait and see if he's got to come into the pits due to the damage of the suspension. I don't think so, given the fact he carried on, but he will be trying to nurse the car and get a feel for what damage is there as he makes his way onwards towards turn at number 5-6. And now we're back to live pictures. Whilst this has been happening, meanwhile we have also got the ongoing battle between Randall and Williams here for P7, as they make the way out to turn at 7-8 and up towards 9-10, in fact clearing 10 now, and I believe that is the Skip's Racing Machine, the number 18 car, going around there as they made their way out to turn 10, and as he caught the car in time, well, he's going to be past here with Perez going low and looking simply to make the move stick as the number 89 driver here, keeping it smart for Astro Racing, but he'll know he's got plenty more ground he's got to cover before this race is over. We hit the first quarter point, 10 minutes complete, 30 to go, and Perez here now with some pressure from his rival behind as they head up towards turn number 19. But as they come on through, we're hearing that Vaughan Roberts has come into the pit lane. And I wonder if for Vaughan Roberts this is a sign of an early pit stop, so we're not aware of any damage to the car. As we see Perez here keeping firmly in control of what is now P8 on circuit, but we believe effective at P9 of strategy works out in the favour of Vaughan Roberts. Will the Spaniard here continue to push on, as meanwhile Clark Williams chasing after Jeff Randall, and Randall there showing no signs of abating as the Englishman looks to try and pressure his way into the P6. They're coming on through the double right and through the infield section. They've got Krimholz just ahead of them, and I can tell you right now that Stefan Krimholz really losing lap time compared to his peers. In fact, to give you that comparator over the last couple of laps, the Artel Motorsport driver makes his way on around. Well, we do look to the lap times available on screen, and we can see here versus Randall behind. Well, over the last couple of laps, he has lost a lot of time, in fact been a bit faster early on in the race, but now in the last two laps in particular, he's lost 2.5 seconds compared to Randall, and that goes to show how right now the Artel Motorsport driver really seemingly struggling on pace. But as he heads out to turn number 10, he'll be trying to settle it down and perhaps hoping he can tuck into this battle and just simply get himself into the tow and give himself some fuel efficiency. But as he makes his way up towards the bus stop chicane, it's not good signs for the 744 driver, as meanwhile further back here we do see Paolo Anzioso looking down the inside here of Tiz de Jong as they head on through towards the bus stop chicane in this battle for P15. The Artel Motorsport blue driver there trying to get the move done nice and early. De Jong's going to have other ideas here as they head into the braking zone. Well, in the end, not a braking to lift off, but you get the point in terms of them shaping the speed off. And as they make the way in towards turn number 19, the Italian here gets it right. But meanwhile, I think we've had an instant for Krimholz, as we've heard he's had to be towed to the pit lane, and we will get a replay of what's happened very shortly. To hear that Burns is into the pit lane from the race of, was at the time P10, and therefore Burns I think decided to go on strategy. So we have got a couple of early pit stops for drivers, but Anzioso under pressure here from what is Van der Meerden, as Maiden looks up the inside of the pair. He gets past Tiz de Jong on the run to turn 1, and as they make the way through turns 1 and 2 and now down towards 3, already Van der Meerden is going to look to go around the outside, but the STN driver here can't quite get it done. He can't cut back either. The door's left open, but de Jong's not able to find the move in return, and as they head up towards turn number 5, onto the brakes very shortly, and Anzioso covering him off here, and we can see the Dutchman doing everything right. Well, Anzioso carrying a lot of speed into turn 6, and what I thought the car was going to go wayward for a minute there, and that goes to show you just how much the circuit whip he's using as we ride on board with Van der Meerden as they head up towards turn number 9. And coming into the right hander, you can see Anzioso really pushing the chassis of the car, sliding on the rear end as he came beyond the apex of turn number 9. And I think right now all Van der Meyden's got to do is nail these apexes, just take a natural line, and he'll get this done automatically. Because I think Anzioso, to be fair, this is not to besmirch his racing reputation. He's just pushing that car so hard to keep ahead. And I think if he just settles it down right now, then Van der Meyden would not be closing as rapidly here as he is. But as they make the way up towards the bus stop chicane, he's going to look around the outside, but Anzioso is going to cover off the inside run here, and well, it's going to now be an opportunity for Van der Meyden to use the second run up towards the second chicane in order to try and get this done as a new fastest lap of this race for our race leader Mark Beckhouse, a 40.521, and it's immediately shattered by Wade in P3, who sets a 40.454. But as Van der Meyden comes on down, he's not able to close up, and I think Anzioso getting the better run out of the bus stop, and now I think they're just calming down for a brief moment before they get ready to battle once again onto this next lap. They're heading on down and around. Meanwhile, Ludwig Sauer here, who we didn't see too much of in the sprint race for today due to the instances involved in, but trying to pick his way through the order, currently P15 behind Placia as they head in towards turn number 3, and coming on through the double right-hander very shortly, keeping it close, keeping it tight and compact, and Titus de Jong behind there as they head up towards turns 5 and 6, and Sauer here definitely now trying to up the tempo versus Remco Placia as they come on through and up the hill, looking for potential cutback. Can he find it? We've got a car around there, and they always have to take evasive action, and that's Van der Meyden who's gone round at turn number 6, getting it wrong there. I wonder if that was a little bit of contact with the wall. Alternatively, the car's just cut loose, but he's pushed it too hard in the end. Anzioso finding the right balance of pushing versus defending. And as Sauer here continues to harass the back of players, so we take a look at what happened to Rody Van der Meyden. We're heading in towards turn number 5. Car looking hooked up initially, into 6 he went, and in the end, Anzioso backing off the car slightly after a near miss, and Van der Meyden having to back off, and it was a small tap by Daniel Tufts by the looks of things, which led to that contact. As we take another look back from Tufts' perspective, I think we will see the picture here, and I think there's a concertina effect in play, because watch Anzioso at the front of this group. He gets wrong, has to catch the car, and then Van der Meyden backs off slightly. Tufts has got nowhere to react to that point. Well, for Tufts, I think you'd argue it's a racing incident. You can definitely see his perspective on that, because where could he go with the car? But in return, I don't think Van der Meyden will be too happy that he was given a little bit of a tap around. But now Tufts moves up place as a result up to P12, but still trying to chase after Paolo Anzioso for P11. But as we look back to your live pictures here, Ludwig Sauer looking down the inside of Placer into turn 1. It's a nice move here, and Placer leaving the door open. I don't think he expected Sauer to go for it, but Sauer moves into P13, and as they head up towards turn at number 3, we can see Anzioso here under pressure from Tufts, and well, Tufts will be looking to exploit. Anzioso is very vulnerable through to these infield corners. In fact, they're almost losing it coming out of turn number 4, and now Tufts looks from outside to cut to the inside, or does it? Anzioso covers him off, and now as they make the way through turn at number 6, well, they're literally nose to tail all the way through and down and around on the bank into turns 7 and 8. Meanwhile, as this battle continues to rage on, we can take the battle between Herman and Wade for P2. It's only 3 attempts, and it continues to oscillate in that fashion. But as our drives come on down and around through turn at 9 into 10, where Anzioso right now, Keaton Tufts fairly behind him, but heading up the hill now onto the rise and onto the banking on the turn at number 11 through to 12. We can see a little bit further up the road here as they back off of one another in that battle to be just outside the top 10. Meanwhile, well inside the top 10, Jeff Randall here keeping Clark Williams behind, but Christian Perez continuing to inch closer to that P6 position, as Williams right now only 5 tenths clear as they make the way down towards the final chicane. But coming on through, they've got Paul Smithhurst for company, only 1.5 seconds up the road from them as well. So Smithhurst is falling backwards towards this battle, and as we do look a bit further back here, we do see Remco Placia looking for the move on what is Sauer there. Ludwig Sauer going low and defending on the outside into the turn 19-20 chicane, and Placia up the inside, late on the brakes. There carries a lot of speed. He just gets it stopped in time, but I wouldn't be surprised if his heart started beating a bit more hardly in his chest as they make their way in towards turn at number 1 once again. But there the Dutchman calling it late on the brakes, and the RT Racing driver getting it stopped. but just how much of a gamble was that, and how much is he taken out of the tyre as he heads in towards turns 3 and 4, or as he comes on through. Meanwhile, Anzioso still under pressure from Tufts, and Tufts gets a better run out of 4 this time. Looking up the inside, here's the two drivers head into the corner, and on the apex there, I think it's happened as Tufts simply takes the inside line and gets the move for P11 done. His next target will be Wayne, who is 6.5 seconds up the road in P10, but Daniel Tufts, after a dismal race number 1, is turning things around in this race too. There's no question about it. But as we look from them up to the battle for P2, here's Stefan Herman being chased by Wade. That is Nathan Wade looking around the outside here as they come down. Herman just backing off again. And I think these two working together in a way to benefit each other in terms of making this a continual battle for P2 to the end, with Beckhouse currently running what is 4 seconds up the road. I think for Wade and Herman, what they need to try and do here is work together on the straights in terms of just do fuel saving off one another, change places, and perhaps by doing so they can save enough fuel to get themselves slightly closer to Beckhouse come the end of this race. We've got a long way to go still. It's not over yet. Of course, they're both fighting hard for this position. There's no question about it. But I think they're fighting just as tactically as they are in terms of aggressively with one another, because they come down through 2 into 3. You can see Wade here definitely right now dancing with the car as we hear that Tufts is into the pit lane. I look out my commentary booth window and can see he's making his way to his pit box currently, so he's coming in from what was P11, and so Wayne won't be under pressure for the time being. But it's been very interesting to see a good number of drivers decide to pit very early in this race compared to those who have decided to pit not as early, or alternatively have yet to pit and therefore going at the midpoint or indeed quite late into the race. So a bit of a strategic gamble for many a driver here. And I wonder how much it will pay off, as meanwhile we're hearing that Nigel Easy has been towed to his pit box. Something has gone wrong for Easy, but hoping we can get a bit of an understanding of what exactly has occurred for Easy in short order. But as Wade here keeps Herman at bay for now, I think the swap will come again as they make their way towards the bus stop chicane, and these two drivers definitely right now just trying to work this race out. I think we're going to have a bit of a nail biter for P2 between the two of them come the very end of this race, as they're not showing any signs of letting one another go. But meanwhile, Jeff Randall has closed up to the back of Smithhurst as he gives a little bit of space there to Smithhurst on the low line, and as Randall tucks on in there to the inside into 13, too wide they go on to the brakes, and as they come on through, the skipping racing driver then gains the position, but Smithhurst not fighting this too hard. But interestingly, the last couple of laps, Paul Smithhurst has been on average 8/10 of a lap slower compared to his peers behind and indeed in front. I think right now the Briton may be playing the bigger picture here rather than trying to push the car too hard, as Perez meanwhile moves up into the pursuit of P8 here, and meanwhile Rasmus Rory behind continues to stay with him. In fact, Perez dropping back to P8, we should correct ourselves, as he was passed there in the banking run through to turn at 19 by Kieran Gooden, as meanwhile we do see the Spaniard here continue to stay close, and for that Ludwig Sauer battling here with Paolo Anzioso, and Anzioso on the inside there gets it covered up nicely, and back into P12 for the Italian as from Arto Motorsport Blue. We can see Sauer looking up the inside in return at 1, but he goes a little bit too late there, and well, you can't really get away with that in these cars in terms of a hesitant pass. And Sauer there, you could see what he was trying to do. He was trying to get Anzioso to back out of the corner, thinking that Sauer would just have his nose in, but in the end Anzioso called his bluff and went to turn in, and Sauer then would know if they made contact, well, the stewards would look at Sauer in terms of the fact he should have backed off rather than kept his nose there, because at the same time you do have to have that 50% overlap for the pass to be on as the standard racing regulations, and Sauer there definitely trying to feint out Anzioso, but Anzioso reading the bluff. But as they make the way through turns 7 and 8 and up towards 9, with Tito de Jong and Rudi van der Meerden both closing back up here. It's a four-way fight for P12 back on the cards, as meanwhile further behind them it has spaced out in terms of the racing order currently. We still do have what is 24 drivers in this race. We have had the retirements of AJ Campbell, Ollie Pimley, Dave Devine, also Benjamin Harris, Dario Frattini, Protizic, and also Marcel Brinchviller. But we still got plenty of drivers out there on circuit, all gunning for places. And Smithhurst here back ahead of Williams and Randall, as Williams there up the inside of Randall, coming through 19 into 20. And all this triplet of drivers all trying to figure things out and decide who wants to be the leader on each given lap. But Williams they're going a little bit deep through 1. And Randall looking up the inside into 2 as a result, but Williams will now get the cutback defensive line into 3 on the inside here. But as they come on down and through, the thing that's very noticeable, notice how just in this small episode of battling through turns 2 and 3, they've opened up the gap to Herman by what is effectively a whole couple of seconds, and in fact not between Herman, we should say between Smithhurst by a whole couple of attempts, and to Herman meanwhile with their back and forth between the trio, they've actually let Herman open up a 6.5 second gap in that P3 spot. So I think right now we are starting to see this battle for P4 become a much more pocketed battle in terms it's not going to creep up to the battle for P2, but instead it may end up encouraging the likes of Christian Perez to get involved, and Perez, after clearing his rival only moments ago, with his rival coming into the pits, and that was of course his rival of Budden. Well, right now the Spaniard here pressed on in clear air. He's got Rory behind, and Rasmus Rory here, having come from what was a long way down the order in P25 he started, well, the Finn here continuing to close up. Is he the fastest man on circuit? I hear you ask. Well, he's not quite the fastest. Our race leaders, our top three, are the fastest drivers out there. Very 3 tenths off of them on average per lap. But I would imagine here quite a bit of fuel saving is going into Rasmus Rory's race, for the simple reason they want to jump ahead as many drivers as possible on strategy, as well as making overtakes. They've got to play this race smart and safe. They can't afford to gamble too hard. But meanwhile, speaking of gambling for positions here, Randall and Smithhurst exchanging once again, and the same for Williams, who drops back to P6, Randall P5 and Smithhurst into P4 as they head into turn 1 for it's the 15th time of asking this race. They'll do it plenty more times before it's over, but as they make the way on through. Meanwhile, we look back to the battle for P12 here, and it's Rody van der Meeden up high. Meanwhile, we do have below it, it's De Jong into the pit lane, so for place here as well. So van der Meeden continuing his way up the order here after that early spin cost him very dear. But right now the Dutchman's next target is Anzioso, and Anzioso we have seen does not give in. He's an absolute stallion, is the Italian. Beautiful driving from him over the course of the race so far. I think van der Meeden will definitely find his match in the Italian as they make their way into turn number 3. But as the pit stops are ongoing here, and indeed the time is continuing to trickle on down, and well, whilst we do have just under half the race remaining, now we do start to come into that pivotal point where the drivers who pitted early, such as Daniel Tufts, will now see where their strategy brings them out. There's a mistake there from Budden, who goes deep into 1. Tufts looks up the inside. He's going to commit to it to 2 here. Budden's going to stay on the outside to get the inside run into 3. He knows he can't afford to lose the track position here, with Tufts looking so smart and strong over this race, and well, it's a near miss there for the Briton of Budden as he makes his way down through turn number 4 and up towards 5, and the Skip's racing driver coming up towards the right-hander. As they come on through turns 5 and 6, we right on board the gearbox here of the number 18 car, but Tufts definitely right now, I think, annoyed at the fact he was not able to seize on that opportunity. He got alongside, but Budden just managed to find his way to defend on what was the run to 3 on the inside line in return, and got it covered off. But as they make the way out of turn 9 and up towards 10, notice Ludwig Sauer as well has closed up to the back of this battle already. Such is the time they stripped out one another in fighting so hard. Sauer there being a whole second off, he won't feel as much of a toe effect in the run through the banking here. But now the question will be, will Tufts and Budden put their differences aside here to work together to keep this battle away from Sauer, or will they start to battle hard? Well, we can see here the Skip's racing driver going high on the outside and letting Tufts through. He'll look for the return move after the bus stop chicane here as they head on down. And as they come through turns 13 through to 16, both surviving the sequence of corners there in style as they power their way on through. We jump on board here, looking forward now from the 18 car and getting closer and closer. You can see Tufts defending low, and backing off the car. He wants that inside line. He's not going to be given it, and this will cost them time as they come into the chicane. But they both drift their way on in. It's very close here. It's nose to tail. They cross the line once more. In towards turn 1 they go, and who the 2 Britons will be the leader out of the opening corner, where it's going to be Tufts here. As we can see the Skip's racing driver backing off and not looking for the move as they come through turns 2 into 3. They're coming on down and through the right hand here. Through at 3 and 4 they roll, and as they do it, Budden once again just going a little bit deep, but catching the car nicely to set turn 4 up, but losing at some time on average there as they head up towards the turn 5 apex. But as they come through it, meanwhile we look back to your P2 to P3 battle here of Wade versus Herman, and they're still separated by 2 seconds. Meanwhile, Mark Beckhouse, by comparison, your race leader, is now 5 seconds clear of this. He is continuing to break away. It's a couple of attempts a lap. Beckhouse just simply in a world of his own in terms of those lap times, a 40.474. Meanwhile, for Wade and Herman, it's a 40.644 and a 40.703. They are losing a couple of attempts a lap, and keep in mind that Beckhouse is without tow. He's only got clear space on circuit to play with. Meanwhile, Wade and Herman are constantly exchanging the tow of one another, but the difference is absolutely astounding here, as we can see our drivers making the way around. Meanwhile, Anzioso here being passed by Rodi Mendeveden down the inside into the final chicane. Anzioso there goes a bit deep, and I think Finlay is giving the elbow out there, but in the end, Mendeveden making a firm and hard pass and moves into P10. And keep in mind, neither of these drivers have yet to pit, so they are out of sequence versus what is David Burns and downwards there from P13. Our drivers around circuit have pitted, so Burns, McGrath, Jackson, Tufts, Budden, Sauer, Fleister, Rodriguez, Vaughan Roberts, Krimholz, De Jong and Easy. And we can see with regards to that pack, we do have half the field that's pitted and half that's not, and how they all going to weave their way back in amongst one another. I think it's particularly the bottom portion of the top 10 and the best of the rest positions, which will be the ones that are under threat of the strategic overlay between the undercut and the overcut here, as our drivers make the way around. As we do look to your race leader in a world of his own, as we said earlier, albeit I say that he's lost a bit of lap time on this lap. In fact, the gap coming down a little bit, but as we see that Herman and Wade have swapped places once again, Beckhouse's lead is restored to 5.2 seconds as he heads into the final pair of corners. But no signs of coming into the pit lane yet. Meanwhile, we see Herman here keeping Wade behind once more. They've changed places, but they're still firmly towards one another as they make their way on to another lap. And then we do have Randall, who's 6 seconds back. He does have Williams behind, but Smithhurst has fallen off this battle in recent laps. And in fact, the last lap from Smithhurst was 4/10 slower by comparison with the pair, about 5/10 almost slower, and that goes to show you, I think he's starting to trip on his pace. Meanwhile, Rasmus Brewery, who we have not seen make the move on Christian Perez, has found his way on through and continues his crusade up through the order. And in fact, we do have a replay of the pass that was made for P7 by Brewery to head into what was there turn number 9 and just coming out of the corner down into 10. And before getting to the brakes, we're getting the move done nice and quickly, and simply said it was a move which Vuri now sees himself moving into the offensive for a top 5 finish here. He'll have to clear Smithhurst, of course, and then it will be Williams. But the number 4 driver here doing everything right, as we are hearing that Ryan Jackson is into the pit lane again, as we're to understand it. Something has gone wrong for Jackson, and it's not ideal. But as we continue to watch here, the finishment of Vuri, and now on the back of Titus de Jong, who is a lap down and therefore will be expected to obey the blue flags, and he does so immediately. Well, the target of Smithhurst is only 1.7 seconds, and it is getting closer and closer with every corner turned. But as we do look for our P7 driver back to the battle for P2, it is Herman who continues to hold sway here over Wade as they make their way on the second part of the oval banking through to 17 and 18. But as they come on through, you can see there Wade into the pits, Herman going one extra lap, and Wade there just locking up the front left brake in the process of stopping the car for the pit limiter line. But he's decided enough's enough, so he's going early. But how is this going to play out for the rest of the field? Well, we do look to David Burns, who is the lead driver who has pitted once today so far. And as he makes his way on down towards the bus stop chicane, I think Wade's going to be safe from Burns as Burns gets closer and closer to the back of Peter van der Noord. But as they make the way out to the bus stop chicane, Burns right now keeping those laps together and lapping in the high 41s with a little bit of tow as well to assist him here. But Wade leaving the pit lane already, so Wade will re-emerge in what is P8 as we see him heading his way on out now, and as he makes his way up towards turn 2 and 3 on the pit exit line. Behind him there, that is Chris Wayne, and Wayne has yet to pit, and that puts you in the picture. So Nathan Wade right now, the first driver in our racing order in P8 who has pitted and completed his strategy for today. And Chris Wayne meanwhile will be looking at this and thinking he's got to pit, and where is he going to end up? Well, based on the gap he currently has to a good number of his competitors, I think he will end up somewhere out around what will be Tufts and Budden in the battle for P15, P16 when he comes out of the pit lane. And Wayne, they'll be conscious of the fact now the Gone Skipping Racing driver is really battling in that midfield rather than battling to be inside the top 10 if things run as they are and our predictions are correct. But meanwhile, as we look to the 2 drivers we just mentioned of what is the Skips Racing driver of Budden versus their Tufts as they make their way through turns 5 and 6, you can see the number 18 driver here all over the back of his rival, but coming into the braking zone for turn number 7 and 8. Well, the two of them inseparable here, and in staying so close to one another, of course, the thing is they'll gain so much in the slipstream drafts, but also it takes a little bit more life out of the car through the corners. You can see the difference of lines there, where Forbidden having to turn in earlier compared to Tufts due to the dirty air, but as they come through turn number 10, a little lock up there from Forbidden as well, really pushing that front left tyre now, the front left brake as well, but as they come on through here, the gap opens up to 8 tenths. Meanwhile, into the pit lane is Clark Williams, and also, I believe, as we see Nathan Wade heading on through here, well, he'll clear both Williams and Drury, but Rasmus Drury here leaving their pit box, and Williams doing the same, just a bit further up the road, so Drury not making the jump on Williams. Meanwhile, we have heading on through Rody van der Meerden, who's heading down towards turn number 1. This is going to be pretty close here in the overlap between our drivers as they make their way back out into circuit, and Rody van der Meerden getting back out ahead of what is there Williams, albeit yet to pit, we should point out, for Van der Meerden. So now for Williams, this is going to be a bit frustrating because ideally Rody van der Meerden does not need to battle for that P7. He would ideally let it go on where's the run through the oval, banking up towards the bus stop chicane if Williams is close enough, and with Rasmus Drury only 2.5 seconds behind, well, right now you can see just how much the finishman is closing lap in, lap out, and also with quite a rapid pit stop as well, only an 11-second pit stop. While the faster pit stops to the field, it has worked out in strategy here as they've jumped ahead of Anzioso, who is behind and yet to pit. But with now only 6.5 minutes left to go, we've still got a few pit stops to come, and Mark Beckhouse immediately hears those words and makes his way into the pit lane as we see the Speedboard Academy driver heading on in, and that means we do have a new race leader, if just for one lap. But either way, Stefan Herman takes the lead of this race. Yet to pit as Jeff Randall's also coming in, but Herman here staying out as long as possible. Smithhurst also in, and what about Perez? Will we see Christian Perez come down into the pit lane? No, he decides to go a little bit longer here and keep himself out there to give himself as much track position time as possible. Meanwhile, Clark Williams comes on through, and Rody van der Meerden has been caught out again by the looks of things by the bus stop chicane, unless we're mistaken. But you see them dropping on down there. It's gone very wrong for van der Meerden, but what exactly happened, I think, is the big question that we're asking, and here's the replay. Coming on through the chicane there, and Williams close behind, and in the end it was contact from Williams on the back of Van der Meerden that set this off, so it wasn't a mistake at the chicane, and Williams in the end, well, right now there will be a bit of a cloud hanging over his race, there's no doubt about it. But whilst this has been happening, what about the strategy, I hear you ask? Well, we can see Anzioso in the pit lane being serviced right now, and Peter van der Noord as well. They're both being absolutely serviced right now with regards to the cars and whatnot, but as we see our drivers there, we're also hearing now we've had a bit of an incident for Kevin Budden, who has had to come into pits. He's had to be towed to the pit, but as we see Anzioso coming out now, well, Krimhol's making his way through the bus stop chicane, so Anzioso in fact will be dropping to the back of what is a good portion of that mid-pack, with Krimhol's there not closing up in time. And then as we do look from them back up to the top 10, we look to Clark Williams. And Williams here after that contact with the Dutchman at Van der Meerden, now under pressure from the Finn of Drury as they head through turn number 10 and onwards towards the banking of turns 11 and 12. Stefan Herman into the pit lane, and this is going to be crunch time now for Nathan Wade in terms of, has he done enough to potentially jump back ahead of Herman, but also clear Herman in terms of race time? We'll have to see, as Williams here trying to hold Drury off on the run down towards the bus stop chicane, defends the lower line on the inside, and Drury not looking for the move. We'll look for the run out of the chicane instead and heading up towards turn number 19. This is where it will come as we ride on board with the privateer. Goes high here. They're pretty even initially, but Drury with that initial drive now starts to get ahead and nose ahead into the braking zone on the inside here. I think it's going to come. I don't think Williams can prevent the inevitable move here as they come on through it. Indeed, they exchange places, and Rasmus Drury moves up into P6 for the time being. But as they come down to turn 1, will there be a counter-attack from Williams? No, there's not. He tucks in behind and carries on. Meanwhile, we look back to the battle for effective P2 on circuit, P3 on track currently, and Herman has come back out ahead of Wade. Wade going for the undercut has not worked out, and right now the privateer of Herman keeping hold of that P2 with Perez only what is 6.5 seconds up the road, if that. And Beckhouse, meanwhile, your race leader, clear of Perez. Christian Perez has yet to pit, the only driver who's yet to take his pit stop. He will need to make that pit stop at some point in this race, but I get the feeling Perez will be doing it at the end of this lap. If he doesn't, then he will have one more lap to do it, although he's going to be cutting it very close to the end of the race. So that's something you'll need to keep in mind as Tufts is into the pit lane. And we have heard there's been an incident involving Kevin Budden earlier in this race, and we're going to take a look back at what exactly happened. can see they're sliding to a halt coming out of what was the bus stop chicane, but what exactly triggered that instant is the bigger question. In fact, we do get a replay back of what happened earlier. I'm coming on through the chicane, or we're going to see it from a sales perspective, and what I think it was coming off of the chicane where it all went wrong. And in fact, I think we do have the full replay coming up. All going to be Tufts and Bennett in contact with one another there as they made their way out of the chicane so close together, and with the two of them coming into contact, and Tufts there with damage to the front carrying on. Meanwhile, Bennett having to be towed to the pit due to damage picked up. But we saw them battling close to one another earlier on in the race, but in the end it all unfolded in a nightmare manner for the pair. But meanwhile, we look back to live pictures and you're looking at Wade versus Herman here as these two battling for P2 as they make the way on around. And meanwhile, Perez has stayed out another lap, so Perez will be pitting on the penultimate lap of this race. Otherwise he will effectively be disqualified for not taking that mandatory pit stop. But Herman here tucked in behind Wade as they make the way through turns 5 and 6. Well, now it really is going to get dicey here, because Herman would think in his mind that he set himself up for success in the fact that he can stay behind Wade on this lap and then go for the move on the final lap. Wade has track position, but with the tow factor on the banking here, you don't really want to be leading until you're about to break into that final corner. You want to be on the inside of that final corner. So that's a game of chess just as much as it is a game of motorsport in racing. But the thing is, of course, here, take that chess match and put it at 100 plus miles now on the run through the banking, and you have got a very tricky game to play. As Herman here tucking in behind Wade as they make the way up towards the bus stop chicane, and we ride on board with the privateer as he heads on down. And notice here, holding position behind, he's playing the bigger pitch here, which is he doesn't want to pass until he gets that chicane, ideally on the final lap, but he may decide to go for it early here and see if he can knock Wade's pace away as they head on through. But Herman continues to stay there. Wade will know this is coming. If he doesn't see a move from Herman right now, he will know that Herman is saving everything up for the final lap. And indeed, as they break the way, and there's confirmation. Herman's positioned himself to make the overtake on the final lap, but can he find it there as he almost makes contact with the warm corner exit? But they head on to the final lap. Perez has not pitted, it should be pointed out. He is going long. It's Perez, and I do believe will be classified as P2 on circuit, but I think he may be disqualified post-race, given the fact we have not had a pit stop from Perez all race here today, and Perez struggling right now. I think he's trying to go to the end on fuel without making the pit stop, which is going to be an interesting one in terms of how the stewards invigilate that, but we'll have to see what happens after the race. But focusing on what is happening right now, as well as the battle for P2 coming to fruition. Wayne meanwhile fighting hard here with Wes Ludwig Sauer behind and Remco Plessia in front as they're battling for P11, and Sauer there just being caught out under braking the Constantina at turn 19, and behind a Rody van der Moden battling with what is there, Peter van der Noord, as they make the way into turn 19 on the brakes, and Van der Maiden up the inside as he makes the move count. But looking back to Wade versus Herman and Perez there. Perez being on the outside, coming on through the hairpin, and Wade and Herman getting the move done. Perez tucks in behind, but I don't think he's got enough fuel to really push this counter-attack. And you see he's right behind Herman. In fact, Wade keeping Herman comfortably at bay. I think Herman here might have just lost out, given the fact he's quite a way back. It's 2 tenths, but he's going to try and get that run all the way out the chicane now as they make their way through. Perez just backing off even further. He's not got any speed left, and indeed no fuel left with it, but as they make the way on around, powering their way all the way through. Well, Wade here is going to put the car in the middle of the road. Herman's going to go high as they battle their way in towards the braking zone, but meanwhile we must cut to the front of the field because Mark Bales crosses the line to take the win of this race by 6 seconds ahead of Stefan Herman, and it's contact between Wade and Herman at the line. Well, we're not quite sure what's happened there in terms of the contact. We can tell you that Wade has been classified as finishing P2, Stefan Herman P3, and Christian Perez limps home to P4. Very low on fuel, Jeff Randall P5, and it is Rasmus Vuri who finishes P6 in the end, coming through the field at a rapid rate of knots. It's Clark Williams P7 ahead of Paul Smith as P8, and then it will be David Burns at P9 as he crosses the line ahead of Terry McGrauther, who will complete the top 10. As we see McGrauther coming on through there to take the P10 position, and then Chris Wayne will hold off place it at the line to make it P11 ahead of the Dutchman, as Remco Plessia there doing everything in his power, but it not quite working out to fight for the best of the rest slot ahead of Ludwig Sauer at P13, and it's Nick Vaughan Roberts who finishes P14 ahead of Paula Anzioso, who completes the run to P15, and then it is Rodi van der Meerden who finishes P16 in the end ahead of Peter van der Noord, as we do see Peter van der Noord there having a bit of a lock-up and the braking in the braking zone to turn it number 1 on the cool-down lap. Daniel Tuss will cross the line there in P18 ahead of Rodriguez and Stefan Krumholz. They all finish their race. That's the top 20 accounted for, and it is Titus de Jong who is the last driver on the lead lap, who'll be coming around very shortly to complete his race. We've also had one finisher already a lap down, and that was Nigel Easy, P22. But those are all of our race finishers in the end, ladies and gentlemen. We also had the retirements of Budgeon Jackson, Campbell, Pimley, Devine, Harris, Brinchvila, Frattini and Proziek. But as we can see, de Jong crossing the line there, P21. Well, just before we do, of course, cut to what was the results, we do take a look back at what happened in that battle between Herman and Wade for the win of the race. And, well, I believe here is the story. So making their way on the bank in there, turn 17-18, Herman on the outside to inside under braking into turn 19. The turn as close as possible, drifting the way on through, and in the end, Wade just bouncing off the curb and knocking into Herman as a result. I think Herman will have thought he got it done there, but it wasn't to be, because as we ride on board with Wade, well, Wade, I don't know if there's any malice meant here. He was literally going for it. They both gave each other enough space to battle, but you see the car just bounces off the blue curb, makes contact with Herman, and that separates the two of them in the end. But Wade takes P2 on circuit, and well, it's going to be interesting to see if there's any post-race action, but brilliant racing between the pair of them. But Wade in the end coming home P2 on the line, and it was Herman who finished P3 in a classic ending. But what a brilliant race from start to finish, ladies and gentlemen. And well, with that, let's take you through your second set of results for today in the round 2 feature here at Charlotte Motor Speedway. Well, after 40 minutes of racing, Mark Beckhouse taking the win for Speed World Academy by 7 seconds over the privateer of Nathan Wade. Third place there goes to Stefan Herman in that close battle for P2 between himself and Wade, the two privateers duking it out to the very end, with Christian Perez there at P4 for Astro Racing. P4 at the moment, of course, we are waiting to find out what will happen with regards to Perez, the only driver who did not pit in this race, and with the mandatory pit stop there. I mean, well done to the Astro Racing driver for incredible fuel saving, it must be said, but I do wonder whether that may be a disqualification due to the fact a pit stop was not taken. Jeff Randall, P5 there for Gone Skipping Racing, completing the top 5 there ahead of Rasmus Rory, who came all the way from P25 to finish P6 there, and a great comeback after the difficulties of the sprint. And then Clark Williams, Paul Smithhurst, David Burns and Terry McGrauther completing the top 10. Best of the rest, Chris Wayne there, couldn't quite hold on to a top 10 finish for Gone Skipping Racing, but keeping at Remco Plessia at bay. The RT Racing driver finishing P12 ahead of Ludwig Sauer and Nick Vaughan Roberts, and then Paolo Anzioso completing at P15 for Arto Motorsport Blue. Rodney van der Meerden, their P16, the STN driver ahead of Peter van der Noord for Sleepy Cat Racing, and then Daniel Tuff's P18 there, the privateer ahead of Yona Rodriguez. The Firebird Sim Racing driver having a difficult race, but batting all the way to the end and finishing just ahead of Stefan Krumholz, who completed the top 20 there for Arto Motorsport. Then the final finisher on the lead lap, was Titus de Jong P21 for RT Racing, and then finishing a lap down, the final finisher of the race on circuit, Nigel Easy P22. Retired just before the end of the race, but will be classified as a race finisher, given the fact they finished over half the race distance, is what is there, Kieran Budden P23, the Skips Racing driver ahead of Ryan Jackson, and AJ Campbell there P25 will be the first of a number of drivers who will not be classified as we're to understand it, as they did not complete 50% of the race distance. So AJ Campbell for Arto Motorsport P25, ahead of Ollie Pimley, Benjamin Harris, Dave Devine, and as we carry on down there, also Wojciech Prozik, also Marcel Brinchvila, and Dario Frattini for FPM Owen Martin. But those are the finishing positions for our second race of today, but it's definitely been a thriller, either way you look at it, at the Charlotte Motor Speedway. But the big question is, what did our drivers have to think about it? Well, we'll be back in approximately 10 minutes to find out all that and more in our post-round interviews, ladies and gentlemen. Don't go anywhere, you won't want to miss them. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, we are good to go for our post-round interviews, the first of those of the season. And we've got 3 drivers who decide to volunteer today, and we'll be firstly hearing from our feature race winner, Mark Beckhouse, in the number 11 Speed World Academy car. We'll then coming on to our double second place finisher and third place qualifier of Nathan Wade in the 24 Privateer machine. And then lastly, we'll be coming to Jeff Randall, series organiser and double top 5 finisher today in the number 107 machine. The Privateer, I think, really picking up the pieces where other dropped it on circuit. But as we get ready to speak to Mark Beckhouse, it'll be interested in his perspective on what was a relatively quiet feature race but an intense sprint race. And as he joins me now in the interview room, good evening to you, Mark, and welcome. You're our first interview of the season. Can you hear me? I think we may be having some slight technical issues here, ladies and gentlemen, as we're not quite able to hear Mark Beckhouse at the moment. I'm not sure if he's speaking. We will just give it a brief moment. These things do happen, of course, on the first time round. That's why we always have the first show of the season. Are you there, Mark? I do believe.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, there he is.
Sorry for the delay. I was just getting a drink.
That's
no,
no problem at all, Mark. We're wondering what happened to you. Can you hear us?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Alrighty, brilliant. Oh, that's no worries. It's good to have you with us for our first interview of the season. And well, what a day it has been for you. A 9th place in the sprint race, a win in the feature race. How do you feel about Charlotte in terms of how it's treated you?
Sorry, I didn't catch the last one.
How do you feel the Charlotte Motor Speedway has treated you today?
Needed to change t-shirt twice. Just exhausted now. Yeah, it was first race. I just made a stupid mistake. Nesson and I were racing very hard, and I just had to stay behind him and everything would be fine. And I hit the wall and need to take a fast repair. But yeah, shit happens, yeah. But second race was really good. I think lap times were very consistent and yeah, went out well in the second one.
Oh, indeed. And starting with qualifying, we saw you qualifying P5. Fast lap out there. Do you think there was a bit more time in your lap?
Yeah, for sure. I on the last lap I was 3 to 4 tenths down on my fastest lap, but time was gone. And yeah, I had no draft lap, and with draft you gaining a lot of time. So, but P5 for starting in first race is a good position.
Oh, indeed. And speaking of the first race, a couple of moments with the wall and needing to come into the pits to repair. Just take us through how hard you were pushing in the sprint.
Yeah, it was really, the accident happened really early, so there was not much pushing because the tires weren't there already. And yeah, but just was racing with Nathan, and yeah, just racing. I haven't any thoughts so far about it, if I was pushing hard or not. In the second race, I really was pushing like hell, just to get it done.
Oh, indeed. And as we're looking at the replay of the second race in the background at the moment, an early pass on Smithhurst saw you take the lead and you never looked back.
yeah, could get in a good rhythm and just put lap in after lap, and yeah, was good. I was afraid there was somebody saving fuel a lot in the draft and could overtake me in the pits for just taking less fuel, but yeah, it went out well. Christian Paris was a little bit short on fuel. It could have been some challenging last lap, yeah. But I was lucky he was short on fuel.
Oh, indeed. Perez did not come into the pit, so he did the entire race without having to take on more fuel. But in the end, you played it just right on the fuel and came out in front of him and took the victory by storm. And well, a victory today, a plus a P9, puts you in a good place. And next week, it's Sebring. How are you feeling for the Florida circuit?
Never raced there in the Skippy, but I like the track and could be an entertaining event again.
Well, it definitely will be if you're fighting for leading positions like today, Mark. But just before we do let you go, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to or a thank you to live on the broadcast?
Yeah, for sure, Jeff, for putting this league up. For you, for the broadcast, and all the drivers who just put in a good race, as far as I can see. So for now, and was a good race. Everything was fair and clean, and yeah, thanks to everybody who was participating.
Well, we also must say thank you to you for giving us a showcase of your driving skill today. Congratulations on the win in the feature, and we look forward to seeing you out on the circuit in a week's time at Sebring.
Yeah, thank you very much. See you there.
All the best.
Bye-bye.
So hearing there from Mark Beckhouse, the Speedworld Academy driver, 5th place in qualifying, and in his own words they're feeling as though there was a bit more lap time out of the circuit, but in the sprint race, his race was over before he could really get underway with some hard and fast racing just not working out and needing to take a repair to the car, but in the feature he bounced back to take the run to the victory after an early pass on Paul Smithhurst, just ran away off into the distance and never looked back in a brilliantly controlled race from start to finish, and he really has put himself out there as one of the drivers who can control races and one who is definitely a master of the feature race duration. But will he be able to try and rectify the sprint next time out? That'll be the challenge that confronts him. But as we then come on to our second interview of today, it is none other than Nathan Wade, the privateer, who we get ready to interview very shortly, and he'll be interested to hear his perspective on what was 2 second place finishes plus a 3rd place in qualifying. But also on top of that, I'd love to hear his perspective on the battle with Stefan Herman that went all the way to the wire. But as he now joins me in the interview room, Nathan, it looked hard, it looked challenging, and my goodness, did it look close between yourself and Stefan Herman in the second race of today. But 2 second place finishes back to back and a 3rd place in qualifying. It's got to be a near perfect day at Charlotte Motor Speedway today.
Hi, Paul. Yeah, it's nice to be back. It's been a good probably 2-3 months that I've been off not doing anything with regards to iRacing, so it's nice to come back. It's nice to see that Jeff's set up a really good league. It's brilliantly organised, so I'm really looking forward to the rest of the season. Can't be any more happy with what I've achieved today. I'm glad to take 2 P2s. I definitely used that full hour of practice before qualifying, and I was struggling quite a bit because I've never driven this track. But once I got back into the Skippy mindset, it was pretty smooth sailing.
Well, it looked very smooth out there, and starting with the qualifying session, of course, P3 on the grid, we saw it was very close at the front of the field with the pole position lap in the end going to Rasmus Rory, and also close behind was Christian Perez and yourself. In your opinion, did you find the lap time you wanted in qualifying, or was there a little bit more out there?
With the practice I've done, that was definitely one of the best laps I'm going to do. I wasn't going to get anywhere near the top 2. But I was just trying to get as high up as I could, and I was happy enough to take P3, which kind of set me up nicely for the first race.
Well, indeed, coming on to that first race, we did see quite early on in that race a number of drivers get it wrong at the bus stop chicane, turns 13 through to 16, including the race leader Vuri, who ended up in the wall. What was your approach to that sprint? Because of course 20 minutes isn't long, but we saw everybody who tried to push in that 20 minutes ended up making a critical error.
It was just consistency, really. I didn't have much time to practice, of course, and it was definitely the scariest part of the track. There was a couple of times where I had a brown flag moment through that corner. I did clip the curb quite badly. You just come straight off the throttle and just hope to God you don't lose the rear. It's just one of those that you have to full send, really. If you back out too much, you're going to lose to the car behind, and you'll probably lose the toe as well, because you'll lose so much speed. But you've also just got to make sure that you're consistently correct at it. Otherwise, it will be a game over.
Oh, indeed. And speaking of the toe, as we come on to the feature race, we saw for a very long time yourself and Stefan Herman exchanging the toe on the banking and in the run down the back straight. The two of you, I think, exchanging second place more than everybody else exchanged places over the course of the race itself. I have to ask, just how much of that was fuel saving versus positioning yourself for the ending?
I did not think about fuel saving at all. I was just pushing as hard as I could. Before I'd done my pit stop as well, I think it was probably about halfway through the race. So it was about 12 minutes. I pulled my wheels out of alignment from the curb on the chicane. So I was just kind of trying to keep him behind me, because I thought if Stefan did get in front, he would just pull away. And then when I did the pit stop, I spent the whole race trying to calculate the fuel. I haven't used the auto fueling yet. I'm quite new to it, so I was like, I'll just stick to my maths and hope that it works. Luckily, it did. I do want to apologise for the last corner. I'm a bit rusty at the minute with my side-by-side racing. I tried to leave as much room as I could, but I just clipped that inside curb. So apologies to Stefan for that one, but it was a brilliant side-by-side battle with him.
Oh, most definitely. It led to a thrilling conclusion to what was a guessing game of which of the two of you was going to be finishing at P2 on track. But like you say, we saw you clip the curve, and in the end, you became a passenger on the final corner. But still, that has set the tempo. And I have to say, you've been Mr. Consistent today in terms of 2 second-place finishes. It means, if my mathematics is correct, you're going to be our championship leader going to Sebring next time out. How are you feeling for the Florida State circuit?
Never driven it in a Skippy, so I'm looking forward to it, to be honest. I like the track, and I like the Skippy, so 2 things should go well together.
Well, they say 2 wrongs don't make a right, but they've never said anything about 2 rights and what they make, so hopefully it doesn't make a wrong. But just before we do let you go, Nathan, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast this evening?
I know I've already said it, but shout out to Jeff and everyone else that's helped sort this league out. It's nice to have a huge turnout, so hopefully we can keep it up for the rest of the series. Shout out to you, of course, for putting on a brilliant broadcast, and just everyone in that front pack that I battled today. So Mark, Stefan, everyone else. It's been great fun. Great to be back.
Well, we're all the better to have you on the grid with us, Nathan. And with that, congratulations once again, and we look forward to seeing you out of the circuit in a week's time at Sebring.
Thank you. Cheers, Paul.
All the best. So hearing it there from our double second place finisher for today, and Nathan Wade, the privateer, after that 3rd place in qualifying, which in his own words, given the fact he really made the most of that hour of practice and tried to shake off as much rust after taking a break from iRacing, and bringing it all together there, a 3rd place that was representative of what he would bring to the table in the sprint and the feature. And well, in the sprint there, we saw consistency shine through when so many got it wrong in pushing so hard early on. And conversely, in the feature race, that classic battle between himself and Herman all the way to the finish. A bit of contact at the finish line. It'll be interesting to see how that's handled if it does go to the stewards afterwards. But I'd say it was very hard, firm, but fair racing. And in the end, the two of them literally battling on the final corner. That's what we always want want to see in the Skippies. There's no question. But Wade setting himself as a contender, much like Beckhouse. But will he be able to carry on that momentum at Sebring? My gut feeling says yes, but we'll have to wait and see. As we now come on to our third and final interview of today, it is none other, of course, than Jeff Randall himself, series organiser and double top 5 finisher for today. And we'll be hearing his perspective very shortly on what seems to be quite a challenging start to the day with his qualifying position, but then consistency played out. As he joins me now in at the commentary booth, Jeff, firstly, congratulations on what was a brilliant turnout today for the season opener. Of course, you're series organiser, so I suspect there's perhaps a little bit of a tear in your eye to see 31 drivers all attacking the tarmac of Charlotte, but also looking to yourself, a double top 5 finish after a P10 in qualifying. You must be doubly proud of everything.
Oh, it's been great, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, so good that so many people turned out for the first race, and to have a P4 and a P5. I'm not complaining about that after a P10 quality, yeah, for sure. So, yeah, dead chuffed with it all, Paul.
Oh, that's brilliant to hear. And dissecting it in terms of qualifying, we saw it was really close from effectively about P8 down to P21. At one point, between what was P8 and P24, if my memory serves me correctly, it was 1.5 seconds between 16 drivers, yourself in that mix. From your perspective, just how tight was qualifying to get into a top 10 position?
Yeah, that's the thing about open qualifying. It makes it harder. I would have preferred to have been starting perhaps in the top 5, but I had a moment with Nick, I think, in front of me, Nick Vaughan Roberts, and got sort of pretty taken out. But it was nothing malice, nothing like that. And yeah, it is hard when you've only got 15 minutes and a lot of other cars on track. So. Yeah, it can get a bit complicated and a bit heated out there.
Oh, indeed. And in terms of the lap you were able to put together, do you feel that lap was representative of what you were trying to bring, or was there a lot more lap time out there?
Yeah, there was a lot more lap time out there. I was thinking I was probably a good sort of 0.3, 0.4 of a second off off what I was expecting, but that would have only put me up perhaps to P6, P5, something like that. But yeah, there's some really, really quick guys out there, and to get anywhere, decent qualification, you've got to be consistent in the quali. But yeah, there's some really, really quick guys, so it's always going to be hard to qualify at the top.
Oh, most definitely. And then coming on to, of course, the sprint race, the first of the day, we did see early on in the race a number of major drivers at the front of the field, including pole sitter Vori make a major error at the bus stop chicane. Your thoughts on that race? It seemed as though for a race that's all about pace, it actually came more down to consistency rather than pace in the sprint.
Yeah, this is that circuit that if you don't nail that chicane every time, you're going to be in some sort of world of trouble. We've seen it so many times in the officials this week that the race ain't over till the last lap is done, because even on the last lap you can have someone have an incident on that chicane, stick it in the barrier, and it's all over. So it wasn't a surprise that there were quite a few people having a bit of an issue there. It's a tricky little chicane, and it can throw you off big styly.
Oh, indeed. And in catching so many out, and then we saw you ascend through the order to finish in what was P4 in the sprint, setting yourself up with what was a P7 start on the feature race grid. What was your thought process going into the feature? Did you have a particular strategy in mind, or was it just see how the race plays out?
The main strategy was staying out of trouble, so I promptly had an issue on the first chicane, and put myself back down a couple of spots, and then fought my way back up again, and then put myself down again with another mistake. So that whole strategy of staying out of trouble really didn't work very well on this time. But yeah, I was pleased to fight back for a couple of times and end up in 5th. It was hard fought.
Oh, indeed. And we saw the battle in between yourself and also what was Clark Williams and Paul Smith first. The trio of yourselves all swapping places, and at some points it looked as though it was just as much a no after you sir, no after you going into the final chicane, and at other points it started to get a bit elbows out. Was there a bit of fuel saving involved in that, or was it track position in your mind all the time?
Yeah, no, it was just being sensible and being careful. I'm sure you understand that going side by side through those chicanes, it's going to cost you so much time. So sometimes it's best just to kind of back off and let someone through, go line astern, and save the real battling to the last couple of laps maybe. But yeah, when you're sort of midway through a 40-minute race, I think definitely being patient is what it's all about.
Oh, indeed, and that patience proving key in the end for you to bring it on home in P5 and make it a double top 5 and give you quite the points haul going into our next 2 rounds in a week's time. Speaking of which, we head to Sebring next Friday. How are you feeling for the Florida State Circuit?
Well, I'm a bit like Mark, actually. I've never raced anything there. I mean, I don't know if he's raced any cars there, but I've never, not even raced a Skippy there, not a single car. So I've had a few laps in it just to see what it's all about, and it looks like it's going to be a real draft fest, to be honest, which will make it a lot of fun, I think, for anyone watching and for you commentating. I think you'll be on your toes in that one.
Most definitely, I tell you, I'm looking forward to it, and I'm looking forward to seeing how you get on at Sebring. But just before we do let you go, Jeff, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast this evening?
Actually, yeah, there is, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I just want to thank a few people. There's Chris Wayne for his work on the design and the spreading of the word of this competition. He's done a great job. Both Jack Atkinson, who wasn't here tonight, but he'll be along next week and the weeks after, and Wojtek Podacek for their race settings guidance. Couldn't have done it without those two. Mark Beckhouse, who won the feature race, his work with race stewarding and general advice, he's been top man. Simon Schultz for the use of his website, which is IR League Manager, and that makes keeping the scores so much easier, so thank you to him. And of course, Paul, you for your professional broadcast and what everybody doesn't see, the large amount of work that you've done behind the scenes, which, you know, as I said, that mostly goes unseen. And finally, to all the drivers for showing up and giving it their all. It's been a great night.
Well, plenty of thank yous there, but it just goes to show for everyone tuning in, it's a huge team effort with regards to running this series. And well, Jeff may be the man with a plan behind the scenes, but everyone coming together to support the Skippies. And well, thank you to you, Jeff, for running this series, but also for joining me in the interview room tonight. And we do look forward to seeing how you get on in a week's time at Sebring.
Pleasure, Paul. See you next week.
All the best. So here and there from Jeff Randall, the 107 driver, and we've just corrected on screen from Gone Skipping Racing, and not a private tip, but from the Gone Skipping Racing outfit. And well, what a strong night for him with regards to the double top 5 finish. And in his own words there, a little bit of frustration with regards to qualifying in terms of not finding that ideal lap time, but the opposite being true as well with regards to it being so close to an open qualifying session. It was always going to be nip and tuck to find the ultimate lap time, and instead having to cede to be about 3 to 4 tenths off and then find a way through in the race. The sprint race, keeping it calm, keeping it consistent, and picking up places gradually, and also from others' mistakes in the feature race. Again, hoping to take a calm and consistent approach, but immediately compromising that by dropping down the order and having to fight his way back through. That it did lead to a brilliant three-way battle between himself and what was Clark Williams and Paul Smithhurst. I'm sure plenty more of those types of battles will occur as we go on, including at Sebring in a week's time. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our 3 interviews for today, and you have heard from the trio. Well, most recently, of course, Jeff Randall there from Gone Skipping Racing, and then previously you heard from Nathan Wade, the privateer there in the number 24 car, and our first interview of the day and our feature race winner was Mark Beckhouse in the number 11 Speed World Academy machine. Congratulations to all 3 of them for their results, and thank you to them once again for joining me in the interview room. And of course, we look forward to hearing from more of our drivers as of next week. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have enjoyed today's show and you want to know more about the Skip Barber Challenge Trophy, perhaps you're sat there thinking right now, you know, I absolutely love Skippies as well. Why am I not on that grid? I love iRacing, I want to be out there. Well, if you want to join us, alternatively, you just want to get in touch with all the drivers and get in amongst the scene, then why not join the official Discord invite link available on screen there. Also, a big thank you to our official sponsors, Musical Money, their web address musical-money.co.uk, the quick, easy and safe way to turn your musical equipment into money. But with that, ladies and gents, but of course, we've had our season opener. We're getting things underway. And next time, we head to the state of Florida for the Sebring International Raceway. Rounds 3 and 4, lying wait on Friday, the 24th of March, 2023. It's a fast, it's a hard circuit, and a circuit that takes no prisoners with regards to the suspension of any car, and indeed our driver's abilities into multiple blind apexes. Overtaking is a plenty there, but you've got to be bold to pull it off. But who's going to be bold in the Barber to come out on top in rounds 3 and 4? Tune in next week to find out. But until then, we have been what is the Skip Barber Challenge Trophy for 2023. I've been your host and commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, have a fantastic weekend ahead, and most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.